There we go. Okay. Um, got my chat up, and today we're going to start with something a little bit different. So, occasionally I get questions on through either my business Facebook page or my personal Facebook page. And if you go to my YouTube channel, just Google Pavlovich YouTube. If you go to the playlist called Lumi Questions, I sometimes, if I have enough time or it's something that I can answer really quickly, I'll just throw it in there. And if it's TV, quote unquote, friendly, I'll look into it just for something to stream, really, if don't have a lot of stuff planned. Um, this still says offline, but then it says it went live. So I want to make sure I don't have any stream problems here. My key's working. Okay, we're good. Anyways, the question was, how do you do things like eyelashes and eyebrows and stuff like that? It's been a while since I've done that, to be honest, but we could talk a little bit about hair, insert mesh brushes, nano mesh, fiber mesh, and a couple of other sculpting techniques that we can go over really quickly. And let's just talk about that for a little bit while we get warmed up here. So I'm going to go to brush. Well, there's a lot of different ways you can do this. So you can go to hit the comma key, and you can go up here to your tools menu. And you can grab this head here. You can grab one of these bodies. There's a Julie Z tool in here. I'm going to just go into my B, hit B to bring up the brush menu, I to hit up the insert brushes, or any brushes that start with I should say. Go to insert mesh body parts, hit M, and then grab the female head. And actually, what else is in there? Female head, male head, male head O2. So 2 male heads and then a female head. So grab the female head or the male head, doesn't really matter. Go to geometry over here. I just dragged out a primitive, went into edit mode. I'm going to make it a polymesh 3D. Then we're going to go to modify topology, and we're going to do mesh from brush. And that'll just go ahead and give me whatever was selected in your insert mesh brush. So you can use that to kind of just replace that. Hey, how's it going, everybody? Also, let me know if you can hear me okay, you can see me okay. I don't have any embarrassing green screen issues or something like that. So we're going to talk a little bit about eyebrows and different ways you can do hair, and we'll get a little bit into hair cards and stuff too. And again, like I said, it's been a long time since I've had to do this stuff, so bear with me. And we'll also just go over a couple different techniques you can use to kind of populate what can often be the tedious methods of hair creation, and either hair strand or hair card or hair curves. They can be pretty tedious sometimes. So I'm going to Google eyebrows because they have a very interesting shape, and also the way the hair grows does some very specific things. So if we're just going to sculpt eyebrows, I'm going to go over here to geometry and then hit Control D a couple times just to get the subdivision levels here. And you can go in here to one of the hair sculpting brushes you can use. Right off the bat is the Damien standard. It kind of gives you a nice thin stroke like this. You can also go up here. Let's hit the comma key, and I'm going to go into brush, and I'm going to look at one of these brushes in here, the slash brush. The slash brushes are pretty good too. I'm going to do slash 2, and you're going to see there's a brush alpha in here. If I throw this alpha over here and we go to modify, you're going to see there's an alpha adjust. So without alpha adjusting, it gives us a pretty kind of like an overlapping stroke like this. You can go in here, and if you want to soften that up a little bit, you just pull these 2 points apart, and that'll kind of blur that middle out, and that'll kind of give you a softer transition. So you can use your slash brush. If you're doing like fur sculpting, I've seen a lot of good thick eyebrows, but if you're doing like really, really furry stuff, you can do clay buildup or clay tubes to kind of block your masses out, and then go back through here and refine that. But maybe we'll get to that. But also, oh man, there's probably a bunch of different ways. Just alphas you can throw in here. Brush. I want to say there's like, you can use the rake, or a rake-like brush, which is basically taking a standard brush and throwing in an alpha like this, and just using this to kind of brush out hair-like strands, stuff like that. But let's talk a little bit. I'm going to drop to subdivision level 1 here and delete higher. and we'll talk a little bit more about things like fiber mesh and insert mesh brushes and curve insert mesh brushes to kind of insert things like eyebrows and there it is, eyebrows and eyelashes. Cool, good to hear. So let's think of a few. So insert mesh brushes is kind of an obvious one. You can just create an eyelash. So this is still going to be pretty tedious, but you can create a hair thing, make a hair, and then just plop it right onto your mesh. So let's talk a little bit about that. So we'll start out with, it doesn't really matter. Drag out a primitive here, make it a polymesh 3D, go to initialize, make it a Q cube, and now we've got just a box here. I'm going to go into my Z modeler brush, BZM, hover over a face, Q mesh polygroup all, hold down shift while I pull that up. Now just kind of stretch those out. And this could conceivably be an eyelash or an eyebrow hair or just a single hair. If I hit D, you're going to see it kind of deforms into kind of a pill-like shape here. So I can go ahead and stretch this out. If I want to, I can hover over this edge, do insert single edge loop, hold down Alt, and now when we hit D, it'll kind of average to a very thin shape here. And we can go ahead, and if we're going to insert this thing, so if I go to B, create insert mesh brush new, and now we're looking at it this way, so when it draws out, it's kind of following the surface normal out this way. It's kind of a hair. So now you can go in here and you can isolate these or whatever, and you can hit D, and then it'll be like, okay, that's a hair. Now, generally speaking, an eyelash is going to look at you and then curl up, and then an eyebrow is just going to kind of lay flat across the mesh here. So in that case, what we're going to need to do is for an eyelash, we're going to go in here. This root I'm going to leave alone. I'm going to mask that, invert that. I'm just going to pull these up, or we can actually rotate these up maybe, like so. And then this will just kind of be a little eyelash lift. If you want to, you can mask this end out and then hit E, and then you can kind of scale this down if you want. So that can be an eyelash, and we can just capture it looking right at us. So the root goes in, and then it kind of curls up. And for an eyebrow brush, we could capture it like, say, this, or maybe even at an angle, and then we can just drag this out. And that'll be an eyebrow brush. For the eyebrow brush, well, let's go ahead and capture the eyelash brush. So we're looking straight at it this way. I'm going to go to Brush, create Insert Mesh, New, and then I'm going to go snap it to the side this way. Let's turn it upside down maybe. And we can just use Rotate to kind of get exactly what we're going for here. So when I hit D, like so, and let's go ahead and make it curve a little bit out this way. We'll kind of just pull this out here. So that'll be a hair, and let's make it a little bit longer too. So let's take our move brush and non-uniformly scale it out like so. So now we got it turned to the side here. And I guess if we want to, we can go to Insert Single Edge Loop, and we can go ahead and just take these and just rotate these around as well. I just want something to kind of hook into our mesh a little bit more. And go ahead and rotate this around. So, and these aren't necessarily techniques I would actually use as far as like how we're starting out, but I want to explain just a couple different things you can do in case problem solving helps you further down the road here. So we're going to go to Brush. We got the Insert Mesh brush we just made, which is our eyelash. And then we're going to go to Brush, create Insert Mesh, Append. Okay, we'll skip that note for now. Go back to our head here, and now we have a basic hair brush that has an eyelash in it and hair in it. So if we go to Brush, grab it, hit M. If we do eyelashes, you can go in here and then just click and drag. And now you're going to want to make sure you're clicking and dragging right on that surface normal in order to get that to kind of follow correctly, which can kind of be a little bit difficult depending on your geometry you have going here. Another thing you can do is grab your picker menu, and you can force it. We've done this before where you go into orientation here and you just tap this on, and now no matter what your surface normal looks like, it'll always drag straight out towards the camera. So you can kind of use your camera to dictate how this thing kind of goes and bends across the eyeball here. And then we'll go ahead and do separate this out, split hidden. Where am I at here? Split mask points. Oh, that'd be split hidden. There we go. For you guys, that would be under subtool split. And if you guys are kind of lost here, I do tend to go I don't really have a vision in my head of who's watching this channel. Super advanced, intermediate, super beginner, never heard of ZBrush before. Go to the ZBrush website. You can download, I don't know how many days the trial is, but it's a healthy amount of days, and you can just go to ZBrush, and they got a lot of Z Pixelogic classroom training on there. You can go to my YouTube channel. My name's somewhere on the screen. Actually, it should be. Let me double check that. Yeah, just Google Pavlovich YouTube channel. I've got an intro to ZBrush part 1. It's all free. You can go to my Gumroad and download it if you want for free. And that'll kind of walk you through a lot of the basics here. Everybody good so far? Cool, perfect. And so we've got that, and that's one way. Now you've got the eyelashes on there, and you got to go, well, you know, they're not all going to be the same size, and I just kind of dragged them out. Okay, there's another thing too. So if we go here, brush, insert mesh, and we'll start dragging these out. If you do want to drag them out the same size as you go, just to kind of start with, you can make your brush size a certain size, and then start dragging out and hit Control, and that'll snap it to a very consistent size. Now we still have picker on, so it's coming straight at us from the camera view, but you can use that technique to just make your eyelashes very, very consistent. You don't have to worry about, or make anything. If you're doing bolts, rivets, and you want them to be the same size, obviously you're going to do that. So if we go brush, insert, industrial parts, do a flat head screw, and we're going to make a little Frankenstein here. And it's basically the exact same size as that brush size. So here, you're just holding down Control. So you're dragging out, and then hold down Control, it'll snap to your brush size. You're going to want to make sure you have dynamic on. If you hold down Shift and turn dynamic off, what's going to happen is you're going to make your brush size what you want, hold down Control, and it'll snap, and you're good. So you'll start rotating around, and it's good, and you're like, you know what, let me go back here. And you hold down Control, and it's going to snap to the brush size that's relative to the head, which is gigantic. So if you have dynamic turned off, it's going to be like, if I move way out here, my brush size is huge compared to my head, and it's going to snap and be that big. If I turn dynamic on, it's going to be consistent no matter where my camera is. So I can hold down Control, and I can back way out, hold down Control, and they're all very consistent. So anyway, let me get rid of these bolts here. Go ahead and let's get rid of the, we were talking about eyelashes. So basically what I did was just isolate this, Control Shift click the head here, and then invert that, and then I just have my bolts and my new eyelashes here. You know what, I don't even need the new eyelashes, we were just talking about that, so I'm going to invert that again, just hit delete hidden, which is under geometry, modify topology, delete hidden. Anyways, long story getting longer. We've got eyelashes over here now. Now an easy way to move these around, and we've talked about this before, is if we go to brush here, we go to brush settings, auto masking, you can do topological, which if you go into your brush menu here and you narrow it down by hitting M, you're going to see there's a move topological in here. Basically what that's doing, if I touch it, it's turning on this topological button and changing the range to 3. Excuse me. So you can also do that just with your move brush open and your brush options docked here. You can just open the brush menu, just dock it right over here. This is how you undock and dock panels. So we can turn on topological. Now, the range we can talk about here, but basically we can keep the range at 5, and as long as these things aren't vert welded, they're not part of the same object, whichever one you touch first, it will go ahead and just alter the vertices on that object. Now, if your brush size is small, it's only going to affect the vertices within that brush radius, but nothing else that's not vert welded, so you're safe. However, if we alt click this face here, and we have topological with a range of 5 on, and let's just turn that off for now. Move brush, it'll move everything within that brush radius. We make it really small, it'll move all the vertices within that radius. We make it really large, all the vertices within that radius. If we turn on topological, it'll move all the vertices within that radius if their topology is close to each other. So it's looking at here, and it's going inside the mouth bag and then back out. So you can just kind of see this here. So you're going to see, let's go way in there. There's a really big mouth bag in here. If your mouth bag wasn't big, which mine tend to be a little too small when I make them, it'll start actually, if you crank this range up, it'll actually pick up a little bit more depending on your range here. So if you are still picking up a little bit too much, just drop that down to like 1.5, and then you should be able to move these vertices independent of these ones. So that's one way. Another way I like to do is we're in the move brush here. Let's turn off topological for standard. Move brush, topological off. We can do mask by polygroups. If we turn that up to 100, it will only move whatever polygroup you touch first. And in this case, there it goes. It's grabbing just the green ones. It's a little bit hard to explain with all these polygroups here. So what I'm going to do is go to polygroups, and we're going to do a quick auto groups. So now every single one of these objects gets its own polygroup designation, because what auto groups does is look at the continuity of your mesh, and anything that's not vert welded, it's its own separate object, will get its own group. And you can do that visibility as well. If we chop all these things in half and hit auto groups, then it'll go ahead and auto groups those. But we'll just make these one object here. Each object gets its own polygroup. So we'll do mask by polygroups up to 100, and then we can just move these things around independently. This is global though, so you can, when you change your standard brush, it will only sculpt on whatever you click first, whatever polygroup you click first. If that gets in the way, you want to move them all at once, make sure you turn this down to 0, and then you can move them all together. Awesome, thank you. And yeah, I do have a ZBrush Core. I mean, Pixologic does as well. I have ZBrush Core intro courses, but I have an entire ZBrush Core intro thing as well. It's about 50 videos, I think, on my YouTube channel. Yeah, and for the brushes here, it's B just to bring up the big brush menu, and no matter where your cursor is, it'll just kind of follow you around. And then to narrow it down, you go I, and that. The reason I choose I is because a lot of these things start with IMM. Some of them don't. Some of them are like insert sphere. I guess almost all of them are. Inflate isn't, but it starts with I, so it starts there. And then these little orange letters right here designate the next button you can click. So you can kind of memorize those. If you don't want to assign a hotkey, which you definitely can, and if you're using something a lot, just assign a hotkey to it. But if it's something you don't use very much, like I do BTO, and what that does is basically select the topology brush. So B, T for topology brush, O, the little orange thing, and that selects that brush. So it can kind of memorize some things I don't use that often. You could do this for independent teeth, and we can actually go into that if you want to. We touched a little bit on that. Maybe it was on my channel. I have a Twitch stream I do on my own channel. I get them confused a little bit, but yeah, we can make a pair of gums, do individual teeth. We can kind of insert those around. There's actually a really interesting insert mesh brush for teeth that we can talk about as well. And again, Spectre Dave, it's I don't mind. It's not like I have, like I said, it's not like I have a specific audience in mind. I'm totally cool to cater to if you're just starting out or you know nothing about ZBrush. Like I said, I tend to go a little bit fast when I'm just kind of doing stuff. But if you have any questions, just holler them out. But definitely check out the Intro to ZBrush stuff to kind of see how fast and useful this program will be, if it'll fit within your workflow, which I think it will. But to get back here, now we've got some eyelashes going. You can move them all at once. You can move them all separately. And another thing you can do is, let's go ahead and delete those. So we'll delete that. And we can also go, let's select our insert mesh brush. I'm going to go to brush, and I'm going to clone this brush off. And basically what that's going to do is just make a copy of it. And the reason I'm doing that is I want to turn this brush into a insert mesh curve brush. I'm going to go over here to stroke, and we're going to go over here to curve functions, and curve modifiers. I'm going to turn curve mode on. I'm going to hit M, grab the eyelash brush we just made, and with curve mode on, we can now drag out a bunch of eyelashes all at once, except one thing I forgot. They need to be one polygroup. So if it's more than one polygroup, it thinks it's an insert multi-mesh curve tube, and try insert mesh, which we can get to in a bit too. So let's go back. I'm going to go out of edit mode, hit Control N, and we'll do both of these, but we're going to hit Control W. So I'm going to hit Control W on our old eyebrow brush here. I'm going to go B, create insert mesh, new, and then I'm going to see this little undo slider up here. I'm just going to pull this back until we get to where our eyelash brush was. Hit Control W, and we're going to look right at it, which I think was, did we go back too far? I don't really remember. Let's just rotate this up. Okay. So now we're gonna hit Control W. And Control W is basically, long story short, if anything's not masked and it's just visible, it'll just give it its own polygroup. So I'm gonna hit B. We've got the new one selected, create an insert mesh, append. And now what we can do, let's go back to our head here. Now we can go over here to our curve functions, curve mode up here underneath the curve menu under your stroke menu, which I docked. Here, we're going to turn on curve mode. And now what that'll do is that eyelash that we were drawing out will now be drawn in a line facing the way we captured it. So now we have an eyelash or an eyebrow brush, depending on which one you choose. Now I can go through here. If I hit M and grab this one, it'll update it with our eyelash. So this one is our eyebrow, maybe. Did I grab the right one? Let's see, 1, 2. So yeah, this is our eyebrow. There we go. There's our eyebrow, and then we can switch it over on the fly in this. In fact, if we want to, we can go to brush, BI. We can go to insert mesh army curve, hit M, grab a bike chain, and that'll update the curve on the fly as well. So anything that has this little curve mode turned on, you can update this curve on the fly, and it'll go ahead and replace that. In fact, any curve that you have in your scene, you can do that with. So if I tap off here, which gets rid of that curve, and that can also be achieved by just going to curve functions delete. You can go, let's go ahead, unmask, let's hide our face here. We'll do delete hidden, and we'll just grab, hold down Control Shift, go to your select lasso, and I'm just going to open up a, well, let's just do one. Let's do this. I'm going to slice right through the top of her head here. That's going to give us 2 polygroups. I'm going to isolate this top part here, and it doesn't look like she has any open holes, which is good. So now I can go over here to where it says frame mesh under curve functions. I'm going to choose border. That's going to give me a curve right along there. I'm going to hold down Control Shift, bring everything back. And now I can go to brush, insert. Let's pick something else. Let's do a zipper, M. Let's choose closed zipper here. And I'm going to tap this curve, and now she's got a zipper going around her head. So I don't know, that's pretty artsy, pretty deep. Now you can change the size of this zipper by just changing your brush size. So if I make it smaller and tap, that'll just update the curve to have a smaller insert mesh, make it larger. You can also, again, brush, curve, well, brush, insert maybe, curve, M, stitches. Now if it does that, it's trying to compensate a little bit for that, for the curve that was there to match, I think, the curve step, the updated curve step that this one had. So in this case, what I would do is I'll just undo back to there, and then we'll just start fresh with that curve. Now I got stitches. Let's make them a little bigger. Perfect. Now if we want to make those stitches closer together, again, that's just that curve step here. And we've talked about insert curve meshes before too on here. So I want to go do a whole big insert mesh curve thing, but I always think they're really interesting and fun to play with. So back to our eyelash brush here. How's everybody doing? Cool. Yeah, well, you know what? We'll give it a shot with teeth. I think this will be fun. I hope. If it's not fun for anybody, then I apologize. But we'll have some fun with eyebrows and teeth and hair. Again, I don't do this very often, but we'll be able to figure it out. At least I'll be able to show you a bunch of stuff, which is why I show up here. Cool. I love traditional sculptors. Those are my favorites. Whenever I need inspiration, I just go grab some traditional sculpting guys. I fake it. If I want to feel like a traditional sculptor, what I'll do is I'll sculpt something in ZBrush and then throw it in a Keyshot and put it on like a little workbench with a little armature and make me feel like I actually know how to sculpt with clay. And we can do that too when we're done here. And if I ever miss a question in here, I'm trying to keep up, but just keep shouting it at me and I'll catch it. I don't ever mean to like skip a question or anything like that. Cool. So we'll go back. We got our eyelash brush here. So now we can go in here and we can just drag a curve right along here and we can try and get it to just go right along here. And now we've got these. all laid out. If we want to make them a little bit bigger, you can make your brush size bigger and then just tap to update that curve. And that might save you a little bit of time. And then when you're kind of ready to start rotating these things, I don't know of a way to rotate a curve dynamically while it's still an active curve. You can relax it if you go over here to curve functions, curve modifiers. It's 5 and 6. So here it is. Smooth is 6. You can hit the 6 key. That'll smooth your curve, and then you can update it by tapping it. You can take a snapshot of your curve and save duplicates. In this case right here, what I would probably do, well, number one, what I want to do is under curve modifier, I'm going to turn on, I don't remember if it's intensity or size. I usually just turn them both on. And you know how eyelashes usually go from small to large to small? We can do this with this curve. So I'm going to go small. I'm going to click in here and just drag this to the top, and it's going to go small to large, and then I'm going to go back down to small. So now when I update this curve, you're going to see it's going to go from a small to a large to a small, and you can just keep adjusting these. If you want to go really small, pull these down, and it'll just update accordingly. When you're happy with the initial placement, again, you can just tap off, or you can hit this curve functions delete. And then because everything is automatically masked, if you go, in fact, if you go from brush, auto masking, you're going to see auto mask mesh insert is turned on by default. So whenever you insert anything, or you insert multi-mesh curve brush stuff too, it'll go ahead and mask the underlying object, which really is handy. You can go in here while it's masked with your move brush, and you can just start moving this stuff around and pulling it in and doing everything you need to do. And I also like to go over here to split. Where are we at? Subtool, split, and then do split unmasked points. And then we can alt tap these eyelashes, and that'll split them off into its own subtool here. So now we have a head, Frankenstein head stitch thing, and then eyelashes here. We can go through and kind of pull these back. So that's another method to just getting quick. And then of course, auto groups, move these things around, go in here with your topological brush if you want to go in here and start rotating these things around, or rotating them up, or moving them around. It looks like it actually inserted them sideways, so I'd have to recapture that correctly. I think it did something weird when I captured it, or I did something weird when I captured, but you get the idea. Same thing for the eyebrow brush. Let's see how that one does. So if we drag this one out, the curve mode here, if we do it this way, you can just kind of drag these out. Now, if we want to put those closer together, we're going to need to go to our stroke menu here, and the curve step, we'll do like 0.5, and then that'll bring them a little bit closer together. And you can keep putting these things in, like 0.25, and it's still going big to small to big, so you can go ahead and do this, and you can tap off, and you can do more. And this is kind of looking like a cool feather brush here. And again, if you do a stroke like this, excuse me, you can hit 6, and you can see that curve smoothing behind it. Just tap to update it. Whenever you start messing with your curve snap, it might do something a little bit weird, but you just have to tug on these ends, and it'll go ahead and fix that for you. So I'll go ahead and tap off, and I'll go ahead and go to Control Shift, select the head here. Let's go into solo mode here. And these are all drawn on there. I'm just going to delete all these. We've got the head back. I'm going to select her head, do Control Shift A. So what I'm basically doing is selecting this poly group, and then if I do Control Shift A, it'll select all the verts associated with the other vert. So anything that's with the object, it'll go ahead and grab it. And we can just go ahead and delete hidden. Geometry, modify topology, delete hidden. Yeah, exactly. So if you did want to like do that non-destructively, what you could do, in fact, if we just drag this back. So here's our head here. We'll do delete hidden. You can always duplicate this off, and then you can slice this thing willy-nilly. And then you've got a duplicate that you can just, in fact, you can just go ahead and like delete hidden if you want to. And then you can go ahead and frame this border here. Do whatever things you need to do, split that off, and then just delete this thing, and you're good to go. So that way you're not messing with your original mesh. You might want to keep a little bit nicer because it's got good topology. So yeah, we've talked about it. Let me look at my, I didn't have anything well planned for this, but I have some basic things like insert mesh brushes I wanted to talk about as one option. Nano mesh insert with variants and auto groups and move. Yeah, we can do that. We'll do nano mesh next. Everybody still good? I'm trying to keep a little eye on here. So we can go nanomesh. Now, what is nanomesh? On this thing, let's simplify this a little bit. So I'm going to go select a cylinder, make polymesh 3D, and I'm going to get rid of these caps temporarily. I'm just going to go ahead and just take these side edge panel loops here. So what I'm going to do is just go here to polygroups, and we're going to group by normals, and that's looking at the angle of your the curvature of your mesh, and it's going to see this angle here. It's a really harsh angle, and let's go ahead and polygroup these faces for me. Hold down Control Shift, and we'll isolate this one here. We'll hit Delete Hidden, and now we were just going to do nanomesh on this thing. So if we hover over face with our Z modeler brush, BZM, you're going to see by default it's going to be QMesh. So you can QMesh. Polygroup all I don't think is the default. I think it's usually like single poly. But you can QMesh, polygroup all. You can go through here, you can hold down Alt and you can drag and you can pull through and you can drag and you can do all sorts of zany stuff with Z modeler brush we'll get into maybe today. We've gone over it before, but it's really super useful program with a super useful brush in that program. So if I hover over face here, we're going to go to Insert Nanomesh, and we're going to insert Nanomesh not on a single poly. We'll do polygroup all, and then by default when you drag that out, this is going to drag a bunch of instances of the default object, which is a cube. So what that's going to do is just put a cube perfectly inside of every single one of those faces. Now that depends on your topology here. So if we go into ZRemesher, I'm going to turn down a zap to size down to 0. I'm going to choose half. And if I ZRemesh this thing in half and then do it, it's going to be less cubes. If I do it again, it's going to be even fewer squares or faces. It's going to be even fewer cubes we're drawing out. Because again, by default, nanomesh, the way we have it drawing out is inserting a single nanomesh onto a polygroup of all these polygroups. Also, if we isolate this one, we'll hit Control W to just throw a polygroup on this side. And we have it set to Insert Nanomesh Polygroup All. It's only going to insert on that polygroup. Or this one, but not both. If you want to do both, you want to go Insert Nanomesh All Polygons, and then it'll do all of them. So we'll just do Insert Nanomesh Polygroup All. And we don't necessarily want to do this. We want to drag out, in this instance, eyelashes. So we'll have to make an eyelash thing that we can pull in. So I'm going to go back to our head here. And again, you could work on a clone of this. We just duplicate this thing off, hide the other head. We can also hit X to go across X symmetry here. If you go to transform, this is just going to do everything we're doing across symmetry, which might be useful. We can always mirror it later, but so we can get right in here. And I've got my Z modeler brush. I'm going to hold down Alt, and I'm just going to drag over these faces, and that's marking them basically as a single polygon. Or you can just think of it as just marking them as a polygroup. Now I'm being careful because by default I have insert single edge loop, which will just insert edge loops like so. If you hold down Alt, it'll delete an edge loop. So just be careful. If you are having a hard time, what I like to do when I'm getting into kind of tight spaces, and I just want to do face operations, I'll hover over an edge and I'll say, you know what, edges, you do nothing. You know what, points, you do nothing. And now anything I do will just affect the faces. So that comes in handy. Okay, so we got those polygroups marked here. And now what we can do, and the reason I said, like if we do QMesh polygroup all, it's going to QMesh all those polygons. If we do QMesh a single poly, it's still going to do all of those, because when you alt mark them, it just marks them as one polygon. Just FYI. If that bothers you, you can isolate them, hit Control W, and that'll go ahead and polygroup them. Or you can also hover over face, do polygroup a single poly or polygroup all, and then you can tap it and then tap Alt, and that'll just cycle through a bunch of polygroup colors. So whatever makes you happy to do that. Now I'm going to hover over this face. We're going to go to Insert Nanomesh, and now we'll do polygroup all, and we can just insert a nanomesh right on here, and it's a cube. You can get maybe a little bit fancy with this. If we go over here to nanomesh, you can change the length and the, I guess, height is what we're looking for here. You can change the height, so we're kind of getting some eyelashes going, but you can do a custom mesh as well. So let's go ahead and find, again, our eyelash brush here, and it's oriented some way. Let's take a look how it's oriented. I think what we want, and I'm not positive, we can always change it in the nanomesh properties, but I think what we want is I'm going to rotate this thing this way, and then I'm going to rotate it this way. So now it's basically this blue line is Z forward, Y up. Let's see what this does. That's generally how I work in ZBrush. We'll see if ZBrush picks that up. So we've got an eyelash shape right here. It's just sitting out here in our tool menu. So if we go back to the head, and then we hover over a face here, insert nanomesh, polygroup all. Now, how do I choose that shape? Well, just like any other insert mesh brush, hit M and go grab that polymesh 3D thing you're working on, and then drag that out. And now we have our eyelash shape. So we're going to go down here to our geometry nanomesh properties, and we're going to change the size. We can kind of see the size of this thing. You're going to see they're oriented all over the place here. So let's go to alignment, and we can choose align to normal, and that'll try and align them to the normal of the face here. If we align a short edge, you can just kind of cycle through these and see which one gives you the best result. Or you can choose no alignment, which is the default. It seems to be doing something a little bit weird over here, but that's okay. That's stuff I can fix later. And also, you can choose fit, and that'll fit these perfectly to the individual faces. Now, these faces are pretty long and stretched, so that's probably not going to do you much good. Same thing with fill. That'll fill the entire polygon with your object, which again, in this case, probably not going to do you much good. You can turn this back down to 1, and it'll exactly fill the object here. But I guess we'll do proportional for now. Yeah. Yes. Actually, let me put that on my list of things to talk about. We can do exactly that, comatose. There's a lot of different ways to do that. Just like yeah, you ain't seen me. He's got it right. You can ZBrush is a super powerful program, and with that comes a crazy number of options. So what you're describing, we can do about 20 different ways, but I'll choose a couple, and hopefully they'll be worthwhile to you. I think everybody will get a kick out of that one. So basically, yeah. So 2 models, and then retopologizing. Model combine retopo. We can hit that. And again, I don't really feel like concepting sci-fi stuff tonight, so good night to ask questions. So we got this here, and then we're going to do, so in here, what you can do is you can obviously change your size first. You can also go through here and you can change the width of all of them. So the width we're going to keep pretty thin. You can change the length, which in this case is kind of length along the lateral side, which isn't going to help us. And then the height, we can change the height. Now, why I might change the height up, if you move the height and then you do height variance, it'll actually randomly give you some variance along the height here. You can also choose X offset, and that'll kind of offset in the X direction. And every single one of these things we're changing, you can go over here and change, just randomly give variance to each of these things here. And then Z offset will either offset it inside or outside, so we'll just kind of push those in a little bit. X rotation, looking good. Y rotation, and then Z rotation. These are all okay. You can flip these things around, and you can also go over here to random distribution. So if we start cranking this up, it's going to start randomly distributing along that polygroup eyelashes. So if you want to, you can use this to kind of populate a bunch of eyelashes in here. Once you're ready to kind of start playing with these things, and you can also random seed them. If you don't like that, you can just kind of cycle through here and get a different pattern of random distribution. And if we're good, I'm going to go to inventory here. We're going to go 1 to mesh. And now it's going to just make them a single mesh here. I'm going to Control-Shift-Click the face. It also got rid of that polygroup here. Do Control-Shift-A to grab all your vertices, and they'll do a split hidden. And now we have eyelashes right along here. Same thing for eyebrows. So that was nanomesh, insert mesh brush. You can also do, let's do that real quick. I'm going to make, just so we can have a little bit of practice, cube 3D, make polymesh 3D, initialize, cube. I'm going to QMesh, polygroup all, hold down shift, And then I'm going to go here, hover over this face or this edge here. We're going to go to bevel, edge loop complete. And we'll go ahead and split this into 3 parts here. I'm going to hit Control W to make it all one polygroup. And then I'm going to grab this top part here, Control W, bottom part here, Control W. And we can make this into a curve brush or a tri-mesh curve brush here. So we're going to go to B, create insert mesh, new. Go over here to your stroke options here. Again, turn on that curve mode. And now we'll have like a little curved tube we can bring in here. If we want to weld these points, we got to turn on weld, which might be under the brush menu here. I always forget. So brush, you're going to want brush open and stroke for your curve options here. So yeah, we're going to weld points where a tripart is on. Let's go ahead and turn on stretch, crank up your curve res a little bit. And now we have a curve brush here. And if this is going to be a piece of hair, a solid piece of hair, what we're going to want to do is go back to our stroke and go to turn on intensity and size. And now it'll go, let's go thick to thin, like this. So now we have like a hair strand brush, and we can use this to create eyebrows now. So let's do it. So we hit B, we're playing with this brush. If you like this brush, you want to do like, kind of play around with it, go, this brush is great. You're going to want to go to brush, hold down Alt, select icon, that'll capture your document here, and then you can go to brush, save as. You're going to want to save these in your C program files, Pixologic ZBrush 4R7 Z brushes. If you're not going to use them all that often, we'll throw them into hair. We'll call this tube. If you're not going to use them all that often, you can hit the comma key, go to brushes, hair, and then now we got our hair tube that we just made here. If you're going to use them all the time, save as ZBrush 4R7 Z startup. Brush presets, throw it in there, and then every time you start up ZBrush, it'll show up here. You can assign a hotkey, and you'll be good to go. So I'm going to go back to the head here, and we can make a pair of eyebrows here. Let's look at some eyebrows. So eyebrows, well, you can draw them directly on the head, or since this doesn't have any subdivision levels, we can actually use this eyelash subtool as a proxy, and then we're actually going to use a snap to the head here, and that's going to come in here where this says snap on. It'll go ahead and snap. So now we can kind of drag these out here. Let's make the brush size a little bit smaller so it'll be thinner. Let's see, like 4 is our happy medium, and you can always inflate these later, but you can kind of swipe and tap off, and you can just go through here and just start creating little tubes. And of course these tubes can be whatever you want to make them, as long as they're a tri-curve brush, all that stuff. And then over here they start coming down this way, so we'll start making eyebrow brushes here, like so. Now if you don't want to do this for every single head, another alternative would be possibly, I've never actually done this, but we're in a give it a shot mood tonight, because why not? Let's go grab a plane 3D here, make it a polymesh 3D, and let's just do a flat eyebrow. Let's see how this works. Maybe it won't work, but we'll give it a shot, like I said. So we'll start drawing some eyebrows here. Update that. And we'll be quick. I'm not going to do the world's most pretty eyebrows. We're just going to use this as kind of a test here. So I'm just kind of stroking these things out to kind of get them laid in. And then I'm going to come down here, and we'll kind of come through here. It seems like it'll work in my head, but I'm not positive. So now we've got eyebrows on here. Let's say we want these eyebrows. I'm going to do, actually, you know what? I'm going to isolate this, control click the mask. I'm going to insert this. I'm going to give it a little bit of an arch here. So my move brush doesn't have any auto masking or any, oh, it does. Turn mask my polygroups all the way down. And then we can just kind of arc these a little bit here. So let's say those are eyebrows. I'm going to isolate these eyebrows. I'm going to go to brush. Well, you know what? I'll hit Control W, just make his own polygroup. We can always split them off later. Brush, create insert mesh, new. And let's go back to our head here. So with our head showing, do not restart my computer, Microsoft. How we doing? Everybody good? Cool, cool, cool. Tire tread pattern Z modeler, we can touch on that. Let me put that in my notes here. There'll be a lot of radial symmetry, which is also fun. Also, panel loops is good for that. So we've got our head here. Let me go into solo mode. I'm going to hit Control W, make this all one poly group. And then I'm going to go to B. We have our new eyebrow insert mesh brush here. We can go ahead and start dragging that on. And I'm going to go out of solo mode, so when I drag this on, I'm just going to hide everything but this head here. There we go. So we're going to drag this on, and now we've got eyebrows. Now, the eyebrows don't really snap to my head, so what I need to do is go to brush. Oh, I'm going blind. Close all this stuff out. Brush. Over here, underneath brush modifier, strength multiplier, and we're looking for projection strength. If you crank that up, it'll actually follow the underlying geometry. It'll kind of start deforming to that. So if you crank this up to 100, it should go ahead and just deform to the underlying mesh here and just lie nicely on there. Now again, these eyebrows aren't perfectly drawn or anything, but you can kind of just make your eyebrows, make them good, and then you can conform them. So that's, and then, you know, make really nice eyebrows if you'd like. But at least that'll save you some drawing out time. To create the what? The cure? What shortcut key to use to create the cure? I'm not sure what you mean by cure. Yeah, I still learn new things about ZBrush on a weekly basis probably, and I've forgotten a lot of ZBrush as well. If I don't use it a lot, I'll teach it. I'll put it in my like E3D or my YouTube videos or my Gumroad videos, and then 5 years later I'll be like, at least the idea is planted that it can do something. I'm like, I think there's something, and then I'll go look it up. But I've watched my own videos before just to remember how to do stuff, as lame as that is. So we did the custom insert mesh brush. We can also do fiber mesh. This will be a fun one. So with fiber mesh is another really easy one. We'll just mask where we want our fibers to go here. And let's go ahead and go down here to our what am I looking for here? Fiber mesh. There we go. And then we can hit preview, and we can preview our fiber mesh, and we're done. Best looking pair of eyebrows you've ever seen. If you don't want the Groucho Marx look, what you can do is you can go in here to the modifiers and kind of just start playing with a lot of these things. We're not going to be able to really sculpt them yet, but at least we'll be able to kind of get it in kind of the direction we want, maybe. So, and again, I'm not by any means a fiber mesh expert. I rarely do this kind of thing, but I can walk you through the basics at least. The first thing I'm going to do is probably knock down these max fibers. Those are pretty Muppet-like, so I'm going to go ahead and crank these max fibers down here. Another thing we're going to do is crank down this max length. I mean, this would be okay if we were doing like if we go in here and just kind of mask this area out and then hit preview. You know, it'd be okay if we were doing that kind of stuff. But, you know, that's another thing too, is if you want to do multiple types of fiber mesh, like this is going to be pretty sparse up here, and then maybe you want to do like a little bit of stubble on the side, and then you want to do like Fu Manchu or a goatee or something, and they're all different lengths. Just do a separate fiber mesh for each thing, break it off, and then start another one. In this case here, let's just go ahead and hold down Control Alt. We don't need to give her that just yet. And then we'll hit preview here. So we've cranked down our max fibers. We've cranked down our length. Now, just like in NanoMesh, you can do length variance here. If you go over here to gravity, we can probably, you know what, let's just do one eyebrow, because what we can do is actually maybe use gravity to our advantage. Maybe, we'll see. I'm going to turn off X to go out of X symmetry, and we can always mirror these eyebrows later. Eyebrows are usually pretty symmetrical unless it's for a reason you don't want them that way. Hit preview here, and then if you go over here and just turn your camera this way, and you kind of just crank up the gravity a little bit, it'll just kind of sweep to the side, so it'll kind of fall to the direction gravity or your ground is, which in this case with the camera this way, the ground is this way. So to kind of sweep the eyebrows back this way. If that mask is getting in your way and you can't really see very well, go down here to masking and just turn off view mask temporarily. I'll get rid of that. Well, that's something else we can do. There's a ton of stuff we can do in fiber mesh, and it's been a while since I've been in here, so we'll probably call this one a day. We'll say that looks pretty good. Again, you can do a BPR render, and that'll give you a preview render with shadows and all that stuff. Pretty intense eyebrows still. We'll crank that length profile down just a little bit, and whenever we update that, we'll turn our head to the side so that the gravity kicks in. So length profile, down, down, down. There we go. And then we'll just hit accept. We can go here, and now this eyebrow is its own separate mesh here. So we can go into B, G, groom. Let's do groom lengthen, and then as we pull, it'll kind of, it'll kind of just pull these things back, and you can go through here and groom to your heart's content. You can go to groom hair toss. You can kind of just start, tossing these things around, and basically your groom brushes are going to mask your root, auto mask your root. So if you go down here to close some of these things down, auto masking. There's a lot of like fiber mesh mask curve, auto masking fiber mesh mask curve. Some of the color stuff when you go into your groom brushes, that color will kind of mask the root. So some of that's already kind of on, and you can also go into your masking menu under geometry and kind of do that. So we'll give her some Mr. Hyde eyebrows, like so. Some Magneto, some Jim Lee Magneto eyebrows, some Wolverine. Nice. Okay, so another thing you can do is you can hold down Shift and you can smooth, and that'll kind of also go in here. And if you want to do thick to thin or long, you can do that. You can turn these things into curves, so you can export curves here into anything you want. One thing I like to do, let's talk a little bit more about general hair really quick. So if we go to, and again, it's been a while, but we'll grab a plain 3D, drag that out, make it a polymesh 3D here, go to geometry, hit reconstruct just to simplify this mesh down a little bit. And I'm just going to chop off these things here, hit delete hidden, and I'm just going to make a general hair card thing. I'm going to mask this top one here, and we're going to push this back so to kind of go into the root, and we can kind of use this as a hair card here. Let's go ahead also, 1, 2, 3, let me get rid of, I guess that'll work. So we'll grab this one here, Control W, this one here, Control W. And I liked when I'm doing my insert mesh brushes to have these things approximately the same length here. So we'll go ahead and just do that. And then I'm going to go to Brush, C, B, C, Create Insert Mesh New. And we'll go over here to Curve. Not that curve. We'll go to Stroke, Curve Mode. Go ahead and, delete higher on that one, and we'll just make like a hair card brush. Weld may not work on a single-sided mesh, but we can give it a shot. If it doesn't, I'll show you a workaround. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. We're going to go to modifiers here. I'm looking for here, weld point, stretch, curve res, and stretch and curve res will actually make the points line up anyway, so even if they don't weld, it'll still be usable. So there's our hair card thing. So what I do with this stuff is we'll go back to our head here, and we'll unmask, and I'm going to go to subtool. I'm going to duplicate this off, and on this thing I'm just going to do a quick Dynamesh here, turn X on, inflate that to -1, and now where's this one at? Did I inflate this one? There we go. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't want to inflate. I wanted to deflate that one. Duh. So this one's here. I'm not in solo mode. deflate. There we go. So if I deflate this one, I can go into my brush clay tubes, and I can just go ahead and start like sculpting in kind of the hair shape that I want, just to kind of get the flow and the direction. And then we can use ZBrush to do hair cards. Now, of course, you can do hair cards for everything we've talked about up to this point if you really want to. You can insert hair cards for the eyebrows, the eyelashes, all that good stuff here. But let's say we want to do this haircut here. So now we can just go grab our hair brush, and we can just go here, and we can start inserting these things. Now, if we want to make it bigger, we can just keep tapping our brush size here. And another thing you're going to want to do is make sure you kind of want to do these backwards, because if these are on top of everything, you want to do those last so they sit on top of it, right? So you can start back here and just start dragging out your hair brushes here. And oh, I went out of that brush, sorry. There we go. And then you go here and just start making hair cards. Again, not super fun. You could try doing some sort of nano mesh solution with these. Oh, if you want to embed them a little bit more, as you're dragging, go to your brush menu, depth, and just drag that in. And now when you drag them on, they'll be embedded a little bit more, and you can kind of dictate that. After a whole bunch of that work, you can make this hair. And that works for like, I always call this like the 1950s Hoosiers coach, like, you know, old white guy from Indiana hair, which everybody loves to do online. But if you want to do anything that's more complicated than that, like let's go to B, brush, hair, A, B, C, D, F, G, H, and we'll do this hair here. Now this one, and we're going to talk about this when we get to teeth as well, was downloaded from, go to zbrushcentral.com or Google ZBrush Central Insert Multi-Mesh Repository. There's a whole thread of people with their insert curve brushes you can download. Really super useful. There's a tool, there's a tire one we can go over too, that talk a lot about that stuff. Cool. Yeah, and then when I'm on Pixelogic's channel, these go to their YouTube Pixelogic channel workshops. It'll be like Michael Pavlovich workshop, and you can watch the video there. And then on my channel, it goes to my channel, the YouTube channel. There's like 20 hours already. We've done quite a bit of stuff, so definitely check those out. Maybe something useful, maybe not. But try to make it worthwhile, right? So we've got this thing here. Now, how do we turn this into something worthwhile? Well, you can just do this, and it's already worthwhile because it's already like a braided thing, and you can go in here and take a screenshot, and it's like, oh, this lady has braids. Awesome. Another thing you can do is you can do split mask points here. I'm going to take this mesh here, and if you, let's do an auto groups here. So if we isolate one of these strands, if this geometry isn't working for you, what you can do is go to our trusty Z-remesh or adaptive size down to 0. We can hit same. Just Z-remesh these things, and now you've got really slick geometry. So what I like to do is use these as hair cards. What I usually end up doing is, instead of trying to go in and comb a bunch of curves, is what I'll do is I'll make a bunch of hair cards, and in this case, even really complex hair cards like these, I can go ahead and do a geometry. My brain just went. We're going to split these, group split. Split these into their own subtools here. If I go to solo here, you're going to see we have this. So if I want to, I can split these into long hair strands just by using if you hold down Control Shift, go to Select Lasso, and you can just isolate really long individual strands here. So what I can use is use this as a control curve for hair strands later on. I do this, usually it's in Maya is when I do the production stuff. I'll do my hair cards in ZBrush, I'll drag them all out, and at that point, if I'm just doing big clunky hair cards, I'm pretty much done. I'll make sure they're unitized in whatever program I want, and then make the textures apply to those hair cards, and they look like hair. Or what you can do is, again, use these as control curves, and I have let me see, texture, import. I have kind of a breakdown I grabbed right before I came on here. Let's look at this. Whoops. Wrong texture. Here we go. So basically what I would do, and ZBrush is super useful. I mean, you saw how fast it was for me to make these braids, right? Or Celtic knots, or just regular hair cards. What I'll usually end up doing is do this in ZBrush, drag out my hair cards, use those as the control curves and whatever you want, and then the curves will kind of follow the normal of the cards you created in ZBrush, and then you can get either game res, unitized, UV hair cards ready to go in a snap, or you can do cinematic, realistic looking hair that's just a bunch of curves that are being rendered in Mental Ray or V-Ray or whatever you want super quickly. So these braids right here took 1 second. These crazy detailed braids here took 1 second, all using ZBrush because ZBrush is giving me the geometry, and then I use the ZBrush geometry to control those curves. For example, let me see if I can grab one of those crazy ones here. I don't have one of them downloaded. You know what? Maybe I do. Brush. IMM. Yeah. Okay. These are awesome. So I'll grab this one here. And again, this is from the ZBrush Central Insert Multi-Mesh repository. So I can drag this out here, and I can turn these into hair cards if I want to. I can tap off here. I can go ahead and do a split mask points. If I want to do like a crazy dwarf Viking with braided hair like this, I'm already done. I can go in here and I can hit inflate. I can zero mesh these things if I want to, and I can just use these polygons here to control the hair curves later on. Easy peasy. Doesn't get any easier than that. I'm already done. So for what that's worth, cool. Everybody good? I'm kind of just giving a quick look. Everybody good? Awesome. Sorry if I missed any questions that are going on, but everybody looks like they're following along. So we've got this hair cards, sculpting hair. We can go back here and maybe touch on this a little bit. So we've got our sculpted hair here. Let's go ahead and delete some of the stuff here. Let's go delete. There we go. So again, we're just using clay tubes. It looks like clay buildup, or what is it? B, C. Clay buildup is a good one. Clay tubes is a good one. I use both of them. I think clay tubes is the one that's set to my hotkey here. So if you want to sculpt hair, if you want to do, you can do really, really crazy hair. I'm not a huge hair sculptor if I can help it. Sometimes it's useful if you're doing like 3D prints for like a sculptural type thing. You can go in here, but again, you can also use insert curves, so we'll talk about that too. You can kind of go through here and kind of start sculpting this out. You can raise the resolution a bit, give you a little bit more to play with here, and kind of get the shape and the direction of the hair going. Go in here and smooth. Go in here with your standard brush here, crank that up a bit, or even go in here with your Damien standard as well. Let's go ahead and under stroke, turn on our lazy mouse, crank that up, and lazy radius here. So you can kind of go here and just start separating out where these things go. You can hold down Alt if you want to kind of pull up. And you can also use your slash brush. We kind of touched on the slash brush here. You can use a slash brush at this resolution as well. You can kind of dictate where these things are going to end up. You can go into your clay brush and kind of just build this up, or your clay tubes here. And then you can go in with your H polish or with your standard brush and start defining these. Let's crank that up a little bit. Do I have auto masking stuff? Oh, topological was turned off for my standard brush. You can kind of go through here and kind of start twisting these strands around. I can go in here with a smaller clay buildup and just kind of start maybe pulling. The hair will kind of twist here, so we can kind of start pulling this around. Like so. And it's really just a lot of finding the the first form you want to get, and then kind of breaking it down with your Damien standard, your clay brush, and just kind of detailing it out, holding down shift or using your dam standard brush to kind of dictate where everything goes. However, I forgot I had hair cards back here. Another thing you can do is, if you're getting like crazy stuff going on, let's go ahead and just do, not crazy stuff, but just a little bit more. We'll just put a base out here basically. Let's go back to our brush we're working with here. Is it this one? That's just a regular hair card, but you could use that as well. Tube. So our tube here. So this is already going thick to thin. So already we can kind of use this to kind of sculpt. And you can make tons of different hair cards. You can use hair insert mesh brushes here, and then kind of start dragging these things on and getting these things situated. And again, right when you finish, you can just tap off, go in here and kind of move these things around, and then go back in. I'm going to assign a hotkey to this probably if I'm going to use it a lot. Go back in like so. Or you can just kind of quickly drag them out first. Make sure it's not snapping anywhere you don't want it to. Like so. Just to kind of quickly get them on there. And then, of course, go ahead and split those off. Go ahead and auto mask these, polygroups, auto groups. And then go in here, auto groups up to 100. And then you can go in here and position them however you want really quickly. And then when you're done, you can hit D, and that'll kind of give you, that again, D is more of a, it's a dynamic preview. So under your geometry here, you have dynamic subdiv. It doesn't actually subdivide the mesh, it just gives you a preview. You can do Shift D and D to kind of snap in and out of that. And then you can really quickly get really complex layered hair, and you can kind of move these things or go in here with your inflate brush and kind of like inflate up these ends here if you want to, and then hold down Shift and smooth if you want to kind of go thick to really thin, and you can kind of dictate. I'm kind of fighting in between these things. And of course you can isolate, and sculpt, and then go out of there. You can mask. If you hit W and hold down Control, that'll go through and just mask individual hair strands you want to. And then at the end of the day, what you can do is just Dynamesh all this together. If you like the smooth look, go ahead and do Apply under your Dynamic, and that'll apply actual subdivisions. We'll crank up that resolution a bit, and then we'll just Dynamesh this. Give it a second, and that'll go ahead and just Dynamesh all these things together, and then they'll be sculptable. Miss anything? Control curves, basically there's programs you can use, really a lot of 3D. I use Maya. Basically Maya can look at a long strip of polygons and then make it a subdivision mesh that's UV'd like just along that strip, and then that'll dictate the root and the tip. I use what is it called? Geo to Maya hair, and that'll go ahead and give you a root and a tip, and then it'll just take curves and just shoot them right along that ZBrush mesh that you have, and then you can populate it with curves and then render them however you want. I don't know. Do I like that Dynamesh cheese? I don't know why that took so long. I think my computer's having a hiccup, but all right, we'll go ahead and delete that. There we go. So, sculptory hair stuff. Cool, cool, cool. Oh man, this is a quick one. I'll get to combining and retopologizing too, but for bones, what I like to do, and this, if you go to my workshop number 1, what we start out with is, we'll go to this Ryan Kingsline anatomy tool, and this is a good reference here. So we already have bones selected here, so I'm just going to go to delete other, and then we've got bones to choose from. You can make these insert mesh brushes if you want to. It's a good start, but if you want to sculpt bones, probably a Dynamesh is a good place to start as any. You can always bring in reference images. So we also did go to www.zygotebody.com and play around with that. I played with that on my channel I use that all the time for just bone reference and capturing screenshots. You know what? It might be worthwhile just because I can bring that really quickly into ZBrush and we can talk about that. It'll give us something else to talk about. All right, sorry, tangent real quick. And so we're doing this, we're doing that. Oh yeah, so I have to show you guys this. So we're gonna go to internet. Cool, you can see this. So this is the thing you can do. I'm gonna go to this side over here. And what you can basically do is I'm gonna take away everything except, I don't need her nervous system or anything. I'm gonna leave her muscles and her bones. So if we wanna see any specific thing like how does a bicep work? So we can select the bicep. If we want to get rid of all these other muscles, just slide that muscle slider over, and now you can see exactly where that bicep comes in. You can bring all the muscles back and click those off. You can click on the pectoralis major if you want to, or the trapezius, and kind of see where all these things go. There's the latissimus dorsi, and we kind of use that. If you don't want to see muscles at all, you can dial those back, and now you just got bones. So anyway, this is a really cool reference. If we want to do a humerus, for example, I can, let's save some quick screenshots here. So I'm going to use function, print screen. I'm going to grab a thing here. Or you know what? Let's do a skull. So I've got a skull here. This will just be a quick one. Function, print screen. Here, we're going to go, I want to bring this in as one image though. Okay, you know what? You could do this if you want to. Bring it into, whatever you want. Here's a faster way. Use ZBrush. We're going to resculpt this skull like we actually had reference from something else. So what I'm going to do is grab the skull here, Control-Shift-A. You know what? Let's grab a little bit closer here. So we're going to do Select Lasso. Here we go. Control-Shift-A, Split Hidden. I mean, you don't have to split hidden, but we'll just do this. I'm going to, see my whole document here. I'm going to do, I guess we should turn on to perspective. Now, as I get closer to the side, you're going to see how my perspective starts skewing. I'm going to go into Draw and do Align to Object. And now, it shouldn't do perspective skewing. I think if we turn off dynamic, it might do that as well. And you know what else I'm going to do? I'm going to go down here to Deformation, Unify, hit F to frame, and that's going to shove it right at the 0, point. And that'll make it a little bit easier to work with. So Align to Object is off, so we can do front, Shift S to screenshot, side, Shift S to screenshot, and then we can do like a 3/4, we can do a top, we can do a back, or you know what, we can hit Control N, and we do these a little bit smaller. So let's do Shift S, Shift S, Shift S, and I guess like that. So now what I can do is go to Texture, grab Doc, and that'll grab my entire document as a texture. Or let's also do, we'll hit the Simple Brush and go to the mRGB Z grabber, and then we can hold down the space bar, and we can use this to kind of drag out exactly where we want to cut this off and crop it, like so. And oops, crap. Move this out of the way, sorry. There we go. So basically what I did is just drag around that skull here, and then use the mRGB Z grabber, which grabs not only the texture, as you can see here, but also the depth maps, which we can talk about when we get into rendering and stuff. Or you can just go to Texture, grab Doc, and hit Control N to clear your canvas. And then we'll go back to our skull, and just really quickly, edit mode, Shift S is how you do screenshots, or snapshots of your object here. So you can kind of just do that. That's all I did. Didn't lose too much there. So now that we have that, or if you did it from an external thing, just go to Import, grab your texture, and it'll grab it for you. So now that we have this texture, we can select it, shoot it into our spotlight here. We don't need these anymore, so I'm just going to delete them. So now we can have this in spotlight. I'm going to turn this down a little bit. And just by doing that opacity thing here, you know what? Did I hit pin spotlight? I guess that doesn't matter. I'm going to hit Shift Z to get rid of that temporarily. I'm going to go grab a sphere, make it a polymesh 3D. Go ahead. I'm going to open this back up. Project. Turn on a Dynamesh. Go across X symmetry here. And actually, I'm going to size this down just a bit. There we go. Turn off. So now we can start sculpting that skull from the reference that we have. If I hit Shift Z, it's going to bring the skull back. I can go ahead and position this skull here. If I want to save, if I start sculpting on it here, turn off lazy mouse here. So if I start sculpting on it here, and actually it's actually going to sculpt through as if it has an alpha channel here, but I can just kind of rudimentarily sculpt and then kind of move this stuff around. But if I move it over here, then I got to move it back. So a couple different ways we could do that. We're going to go to Document, Zaplink Properties, and we can store, if we like this front view here, we can hit Front. If we like this side view here, we can hit, I don't know if that's right or left, we'll do both. And we can do a 3/4 here, we can turn on perspective, and we can do Custom 1, and then here, this back view, or we can just do Custom 2. So now when I click through these, it'll go ahead and just switch between them. But what I prefer to do when I'm doing this kind of thing is go into Movie and go to Timeline Show. That'll show my timeline, and then I can move it over here. I can tap, and that'll set a keyframe. I can move it over here. I can tap, I'll set a keyframe, move it here, tap, move it here, tap, and now I can use my arrow keys to kind of go between these. And now I can just really quickly go through here and start moving stuff around, go over here, move this around, just to kind of get the basic shape. I can use our clip brushes here to kind of clip this here, maybe clip this here. Kind of see the draft here. We can smooth that out there. And then we'll go arrow key here. Again, we're just kind of getting this stuff into place. One more. Looking good. So now I can hit Shift Z to get rid of that, and we kind of have our skull going. If you want to, actually, you can also hit Shift Z to bring it back. Let's go ahead and arrow back over and turn on RGB for our brush here. And we can just really quickly start sculpting, or I'm sorry, RGBing, painting, that's the word I'm looking for, our skull reference right onto here. And we'll go to this side here. We can kind of just paint our skull reference here. Do I have some weird, let me turn perspective off maybe. Oh, you know what? Yeah, I have pin spotlight on. Okay, turn that off. Duh. Let's go back here. Paint, paint, make sure this paint is latched up, and if it's not, it's because our model hasn't been updated yet. So in this case, when we're looking at here, we go, oh, this nose needs to be pulled out, obviously, so we need a little bit more work to go. But at least you can have your sculpt on here, so now you can turn off RGB, turn on Z-Add. If it gets a little dark in here while you're sculpting, just go to Color. If you want to get rid of this timeline, just click Show. And then you still have your arrow keys. You just don't need to look at the timeline while it's doing it. Go over here to Color, White, turn on RGB, turn it down to like a smaller number. Color, Fill Object, just keep tapping that. And then I'll kind of give you, kind of knock that back a little bit. You can kind of start seeing where all your landmarks are. So anyway, sorry about that tangent for that kind of stuff. So let me, before I get too sidetracked here, talk about retopologizing two pieces here. Everybody good? Sorry, I'm a little bit behind. Well, way behind. Yes, okay, so when you, okay, this is a good one. Thanks for bringing that up. So when you have Spotlight here, and let's say you want to use it as reference, so you kind of have it up here, and you make it small, and you put it up here, and then you hit Z, and now you want to sculpt on this thing, right? You probably be able to move, but you probably won't be able to use the standard brush out here. That's in a brush setting. Ooh, this is a good one. Let's see if I can remember this. Think, man, think. It's in here somewhere. Alpha and texture. Polypaint mode, align to matte. There's something in here, I can't remember where it is exactly, that tells it, and maybe it's not in here. It's somewhere though that will tell it, hey, when I'm in Spotlight, allow me to sculpt, because what it's basically wanting you to do is be behind Spotlight to allow you to sculpt. So I can sculpt all I want if Spotlight's sitting there, but it won't let me sculpt outside of Spotlight. Is that a preferences thing? Anybody know? Yeah, sorry about that. Oh, another thing you can do is also you can do, if you have your reference on your desktop, just drop see-through down, and then you can use the website, which you may or may not be able to see. Oh yeah, when I'm doing see-through, you guys aren't seeing that. It should be, yeah, OBS isn't capturing that, but I'm fading ZBrush out and it's showing you the desktop. Sorry about that. That's a little anticlimactic. But you can do that. Where is it? Where is it? Give me a second. Okay, so I never remember where this is. Modifiers. No, is it preferences? This thing is called Spotlight. Is there a Spotlight thing? Man, I really don't remember where it is. There's somewhere in ZBrush. You can tell it when I'm painting. Samples? No. Yes. Okay, under samples, there's a spotlight projection is turned on. So in ZBrush, if you hover over something, it'll show you what it is. If you hold down Control, it'll give you a little bit more information usually. Is less than one, textures will be painted more faintly. Z, depth information will be sculpted. Well, that should be right. Constant build up, fast samples. Maybe that's not it. Okay, yeah, it is it. So if you turn that off, then you can sculpt out here. If you turn it on, it wants you to use Spotlight to project. So turn that off. Now you can sculpt out here. You can use that as reference. An alternative to that, you can leave that on, but let's say we want to do, let's go ahead and turn that on opacity here. I'm going to go out of edit mode, clear my canvas, go to plane 3D. Anybody know what I'm about to do? So we're going to go to plane 3D here. I'm going to make it a polymesh 3D. I'm going to stretch it out to kind of match the image here. And if you want to, you can also go in here to Z, remesher, same, adaptive size down to 0. And that'll give you new geometry, a little bit more uniform. And then we can go over here to geometry, turn off smooth modifier. If you have the smooth modifier turned on, it'll kind of average your edge, your corners here. It's not a huge deal, but if you don't want that to happen, you can just turn that off. We'll subdivide that up a couple times. Hit Shift Z to bring our spotlight back. And we'll go ahead and make this a little bit bigger here. You're also going to see while we're painting, so if we do RGB with our standard brush, you're going to see and we'll crank this back up to 100. Wherever the image was really black, it's going to be transparent. That's a feature. So if you bring in an image that you want to be transparent, just give it a perfectly black pixel, whatever RGB value that is. Pop quiz, everybody. So if we don't want that, hit Shift Z, Z again to pop up this thing, the widget. And I like to go, there's a couple different ways to do this. I go to intensity and I just crank that to the right a little bit, and that'll kind of clamp those pure black pixels into kind of a dark gray. And now what I can do is go ahead and just paint the entire image. Of course, you're going to want to frame this up a little bit better. So, move this, canvas around behind the image to kind of frame it up, and then go ahead and just paint this information on. And if you really want it to show up nicely, I'm going to hit Shift Z to get rid of Spotlight. Make sure you have enough resolution, and then change your material to flat color. And now you can put this thing wherever you want to. Hit Shift S to do your screenshot here, and then go grab your skull sculpt. Oop, that's not my skull sculpt. There it is. The uglier one. And then now you got your reference up there, and now you got this here. So that way you don't even need Spotlight or to deal with that, or the Spotlight projection. You can just go through here and just start sculpting with your reference sitting there. Of course, ideally, you've got like 6 monitors all around you full of skulls to look at while you sculpt. But in a pinch, you can do that. Yeah, and again, this stuff will end up on the YouTube channel, so take notes as much as you can here, and then just go watch it later. No big deal if you miss something. Cool, 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 cool. Brush samples, you got it. It took me a minute. Thank you. Cool, everybody caught up? Alrighty. So let's see what else we had to talk about. Two model combined topology. Okay, so this will be a good one too. And I like to have ZBrush do a lot of the work for me. So I use ZRemesh and the retopology topology brush, ZRemesh, or the Z Sphere topology brush to do a lot of that stuff. So let's grab something. Let's go look and see if we have anything cool to pull from. Let's take a dog and anything else in here I want to grab. We'll do dogs and insert mesh brushes. So we got our dog here. And let's go ahead and Dynamesh this dog. Turn off project, turn off blur, Dynamesh this thing, turn on X, do a quick mirror and weld. Now, I just did a bunch of stuff all in my custom menu here, which you're going to see. We have a base mesh menu, which I have assigned to a hotkey. To assign a hotkey, it's just Control Alt, tap any of these menus. It'll assign a hotkey to pretty much any menu interface, minus a couple weird things. It comes up though. Like I don't think you can assign a hotkey to this thing, but we talked about that in one of the live sessions where it's like, I think technically you can assign a hotkey to that, but it doesn't do it right. And what's the other thing occasionally that pops up is like, if you go to say material and you go to, let's go back to basic material here. These curve things, some of the stuff in here you can assign to a hotkey. I think there's a couple really weird things that you can assign to a hotkey, but generally 99.99999% of the interface you can. For instance, is my custom menu. If you go to my YouTube channel, go to Intro to ZBrush Part 2, and I have a bunch of, I do have paid for videos. Intro to ZBrush Part 2 is a paid for thing on my Gumroad, but I have a ton of free videos in that section that's got all my interface stuff, how to do custom hotkeys, custom interface, and of course you can go to the Pixelogic Classroom as well, and I'll show you how to do it there too. So anyway, we've got a dog here, and let's go ahead and combine a couple things with this dog that we say brought in from another program, or let's do a trim. So so clip, when you do clip here, you're going to see what clip's doing is basically taking those polygons and smashing it straight back to that line where that gradient is. What you can use also is trim curve, which is going to slice. Oops, we got to be careful though. So first what we're going to do is hold down Control Shift, select rectangle, isolate this, and then let's see if we can do a trim curve. Let's do a quick save here. Yeah, when we got something isolated. Okay, let's see if we can't mask. Just want to trim this off here. There we go. So we can mask this area out to protect it. Now what trim is doing is basically all these steps in one. So it's going to take, for example, the slice curve, and it'll slice it first, and then it'll isolate the polygroup, it'll delete hidden, close holes, and it's doing all of that in one fell swoop. And the reason you might want to do this is, again, if you go in here to clip, I use clip all the time, but for stuff like this, it's going to take all of these polygons and mash it back to that line. So you'll have a whole bunch of dog in 1 nanometer of space here. So that's where it might come in handy. Of course, you can also now the thing about trim though is if we mask all this stuff out and we go over here to trim curve and we trim this off, it doesn't do it in symmetry. No big deal. We just got to do a quick mirror and weld. Now for you guys, it'll be deformation, mirror across the x-axis, and then to mirror and weld, geometry, modify topology, mirror and weld across the x-axis. So now you know why I have a custom menu. So they're both right here next to each other, because I do that all the time. And then I can just Dynamesh those, and we're good to go. Now let's say, oh, we still got, do we still have? Yeah, mask by polygroup still at 100. Let's say we've got a dog head. Let's make this a little bit simpler here. So I'm going to slice this head off, and then grab both of these. This polygroup, delete hidden close holes. Now close holes doesn't do a mirrored operation either, so I'll just do a quick mirror and weld, and then Dynamesh that. We can hit Control W, make it all one mesh here. So we've got a dog face. And let's say we have more meshes with this dog face. I'm going to go to Brush, Insert, Dragon Bones. It's buzzing at me. Cool. Oh, sorry, I'm missing a lot of messages here. I do have classes, CG Master Academy. I'm revamping that class right now. It's basically, the prerequisite is Intro to ZBrush Part 1, which is free on my YouTube channel, and then all the free videos and Intro to ZBrush Part 2 and Part 3. And then I basically really run you just a really intense program to do like an entire character using a ton of ZBrush techniques, kind of like we do here. It's just a little bit more focused, just to kind of get you up and running in ZBrush. It's kind of like a ZBrush masterclass type thing. Cool. Everybody good? Cool. So we got a dog here, and we need more stuff because we're going to retopologize a bunch of things. So what we're going to do is we'll do a dog plus, I'm trying to think of something that would be not easy to demo, but at least won't throw us too many curveballs when we get into like tight corners and stuff. I'm going to go Brush, Insert, Machine Parts, and then we'll do, you know what, we can also just kind of sculpt something. Oh, let's do Brush, Insert, Tune, M, and then we can do, let's see, okay, perfect. So we want to do, let's get even, no, not Claude, Brush, Insert, sorry guys. I have something very specific in mind. It's going to be amazing. You're going to love it. Okay, so we're going to do hands. So we've got two objects here, and we'll go ahead and split these out. So let's say I did these in another program, and I want to combine them and retopologize them in ZBrush and then spit them back out. So if I split mask points here, we're going to say, okay, we went through and we imported both of these from an external program. So now I got two separate subtools here, but I want them to all be one mesh. Now, this isn't really relevant, but we're going to go off on another tangent really quick. So a thing you can do that's interesting in ZBrush is you can, actually, do these hands have holes in the back? Perfect. Okay, so we've got a dog here. I'm going to mask here, make sure I don't have any windows covering it. Okay. I always had that fear in me that I need to, so somebody did tell me that there is an OBS thing. I need to go and actually do it, is download the software to make sure that what I'm recording is on my screen, and then I don't get disconnected from you guys. Control W to make it a polygroup. If you want to make it more obvious, we'll just kind of cycle through some here. Green and yellow. So now we can go to Brush, Insert, anything with a hole in the back. So if we do, you're going to notice H cylinder and H sphere. What those are is just subtools with holes on the back. And what I do is I drag it on that polygroup, Control drag, make sure Dynamesh is off, and then Control drag again, and it'll actually interpolate this geometry to this geometry. So what you can do is you can go to Brush, Insert, where are we at? Body Parts, M. Now since there's a hole in the back of this hand, we can insert that onto that polygroup, and again, you can move this wherever you want to. Control drag, oop, make sure Dynamesh is off, then it'll go ahead and sew up those for you. Now, if you have really nice dog geometry and really nice hand geometry, that's definitely an option. We don't really, like, let's say these are Dynamesh together. Let's turn Dynamesh back on. Now, our Dynamesh resolution isn't high enough, so it's kind of just starting to shrink those. We'll crank up that Dynamesh resolution just a bit here, then Dynamesh them together. There we go. So let's say if this is what our mesh is, you know, it's not very pretty, then of course we're going to want to retopologize this. But we can go ahead and delete this. Also, if you have two separate tools that you brought in, go ahead and if you want to retopologize them together, you don't have to use Z-remesher, you can actually just go to append Z-sphere, hit X to go across X symmetry because this is symmetrical. Drop this down. I like to use a matte cap pearl and then go to like a dark gray, and then density of down to 1. That's down here for you guys. So way at the bottom here, whenever you have a Z-sphere active, this will pop up in my menu because I have a Z-sphere selected, but also you're going to want to do adaptive skin and not rigging, topology. You want to go into edit topology mode, and the reason I put density at 1 is so we actually, well, you'll see. So we can go through here and just start, make sure you have draw turned on. And now you can just start clicking through here and making topology. So we're just basically, you know, topologize down this way, go back up, topologize up this way, cap it off, and then I'm just going to click back and forth through here to kind of sew these things up. And you can tap off, or I recently learned, I'm learning all the time, you can start drawing with Q. Make sure you hit Q and not W. And then if you want to start somewhere else, instead of tapping off, which you can do, and then start tapping here and then continue from this direction, what you can do is start drawing and then hold down Control and tap up here, and that'll start. That'll be your new start point. Just Control tap and it'll start from that new point here. I'm used to kind of tapping off here, but definitely hit Control and use that to your advantage. Now when I hit A, it's going to give me an adaptive skin preview, which is under here, preview adaptive skin, just turning that on and off. If the default is on, which is 2, then we go into solo mode, you're going to see it's subdividing it. Don't really want that. So here's our actual geometry, and you can just retopologize to your heart's content. Now, you can have as many subtools visible as you want, and it's only going to retopologize or snap to what's visible on your screen. And you can have billion polygon meshes, which is why I love retopologizing in ZBrush, is I don't have to worry about like, well, this thing is 48 million polygons with 70 different subtools. Hold on, let me merge all this stuff together, decimate it way down so it doesn't choke any other program, and then go in there and retopologize, use their tools. I mean, that's not to say I don't use other programs for all sorts of things, retopology included, but ZBrush is like one-stop shop. I can have a billion polygons on my screen, 150 different subtools, retopologize them no problem, don't need to export, don't need to decimate, it just works. And if I don't want to retopologize those hands, just turn them off, and now it won't snap to hands. And then when I hit W, I can just move this stuff around, and it'll slide along here, and then I can go through here and I can draw. If I want to fix this thing, I'm going to tap here, Alt, just to delete it, and now I can just kind of go through here and kind of move these things around. Now, even faster, let's go ahead and we'll keep the Z-sphere around. We'll use it again in a second. But if we have a dog head and a dog hand, we can, if we want to keep these, what I would do is have them visible. Like say you want them separate for some reason. I'll give you as many options as I can here. So what we're going to do is do a merge visible, and then I'm going to do an append. I'm just going to append this merged dog thing that I sent out here. And now, so I got these. I can always go back to them if I need them, so it's non-destructive, but I can take this one and be destructive. Turn off project, turn off blur, crank up my resolution on my Dynamesh, and then just Dynamesh these things together. Or just have them visible, but because why I'm Dynameshing them together is I'm going to have Z-remesher do a lot of this work for me. So I'm going to hit X to go across X symmetry here. If you want to like change the, oops, I accidentally undid out of the Dynamesh here. If you want to like change the softness of how these are, we're going to use Z-remesher to do our game res. So you can kind of use that to your advantage if you want to clean up anything where you know, like if, for example, I do a lot of this. Let's say you have a really standard brush, the intensity up. Let's say you have like a really deep panel line on here, and it's like, you know what? I'm just going to game res right over that. I don't need it to be game res. So what I'll do is before I Z-remesh it, I'll just go fill that up, smooth it out, and now it won't even know like it's there. It'll just Z-remesh this thing however I want. So we'll put these two things together, and if you don't want this thing capped, you can just slice it, isolate. Let's isolate this back area first, invert that, delete hidden, and then we can just Z-remesh just a single-sided mesh here. So now we're going to let Z-remesher do our heavy lifting and then clean it up with Z-spheres. So really quickly, we're going to go down here to geometry, Z-remesher, and we're going to do adaptive size is good for like, it'll put more edges in transition areas. Like here, it'll put some more edges. Anywhere where it sees big surface variations, it'll put more edges in to kind of maintain those shapes. If you want perfect quads, I do a lot of this when I go from Marvelous Designer to ZBrush, is I'll turn adaptive size down to 0 just to get nice even quads everywhere. Or if I have really wrinkly jeans, I'll crank this up because that'll actually capture a lot more of those wrinkles. I'll pay for it with active points. I'll get more points, more vertices at the end of the day, but depending on what you're working on, it might be more useful to you. But in this case, we'll just we have 100,000 active points right now. I'm going to keep my target polygon count of 5K, 5,000. I'll go ahead and turn this down to 0, hit ZRemesh. And of course, you can do poly paint with ZRemesh to put more density in some areas, less density in others. You can use control curves, you can use poly groups. But since this is pretty organic, I'm just going to do a really quick ZRemesh here. If you like this, go for it. If you want to do like half, just keep hitting this and just keep going down in resolution until you get what you want. Of course, you can, like I said, you can use poly paint, paint and color density, do a bunch of crazy stuff. But if you like this so far and you just want to do a little bit of cleanup, you can say, you know what? We'll clone this off. We'll delete this. We'll grab a Z-sphere. We've already got a Z-sphere ready to go. And I can go ahead and pull back these two separate groups right here, these two separate objects here. I'm going to go to my Z-sphere options, topology. I'm going to go to delete topology, turn off edit topology, go to select, grab that ZRemeshed file here. It'll go ahead and put that ZRemesh in here as geometry. We'll go into edit topology, turn off polyframe here, and give it just a dark gray, and we'll go back to our Matcat Pearl. Control drag, just in case you can mask these points, I think. I just like to do control shift tap and then control drag just to make sure all my points are there and accounted for. And then I can just go in here with either my move brush and start moving these things around. If you make your brush really big, it's going to want to pull a lot of these points around, so I just make it pretty small. And then you can go into draw mode and you can just start deleting. Hit Q to go into draw mode. You can delete some of these and then just start redrawing however you want and just start attaching them back up like so. And then you can hit A to go to your adaptive skin, solo, and then it has kind of a few problems with just four-sided meshes. So what you're going to want to do there is probably, number one, I probably wouldn't go that low anyways. But what we can do is you can just go through here and you can just put triangles along here. So just hit control and that'll start you off at that new point. You can just triangulate these and that'll really tell ZBrush where it wants those faces to go. Cool. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of mechanical intermesh brushes, so we could have given them some pretty sweet legs. Cool. So avoiding tries, that's really more of a trial and error type thing. If I go ahead and just do a quick... so like if you're manually drawing them out, that's a good question. Like edge flow and stuff. I usually find my first shape, I try and find like the silhouette first, and I really don't even care that much about where my polygons go at first. I'm just trying to like just find where the shapes change on my mesh, and then I'll go back through and kind of plug these things up. So I'm not really worried too much about triangles at first. I'm just worried more, I'm not worried about, that's a bad word. I'm just getting stuff drawn. And then as I draw it out, then I start thinking about like, well, this is going to be a triangle eventually. Go here and just start moving these things around. You know, this kind of bugs me here, so I could tap in here. Let's go ahead and Q. There we go. Draw mode here. There we go. So if this is kind of, this is kind of bugging us here, we can just alt tap this one and then just kind of draw out from here. And then maybe just follow these all the way down. Now, of course, when I'm dragging through, I got to go back through here and just kind of pop these things out. So really, it's just kind of looking. And so like there's a triangle there. So now it's like, okay, how do I want to resolve this kind of weird thing here with this triangle here. So triangles have to be resolved by either passing this straight through and adding another edge loop, or bringing in another edge loop from here, or sometimes you can connect these two here and do this. Oops, let's go back to draw here. So you can go like here and make that quads, or you can follow this through. Oops, we'll just ignore that. You can follow this through and then get rid of this, or you can bring in another edge loop from this direction and do this. Just kind of, or I mean, you can actually go through and let's say, okay, we'll do make an adaptive skin. You can do cleanup in ZModeler too. So we'll do make an adaptive skin, and then we'll go ahead and make an adaptive skin, append this dog Z sphere, go into solo mode here. And then you can just go through here with your edge collapse. You just kind of go in here and you can kind of collapse any edges you don't like, collapse them together, use your move. Go out of solo mode, do a quick projectile, and that'll snap those verts back. So it can be a mix of like splitting here, so we can go ahead and split. You can use, and then we'll go through here and we'll delete edge, boop, beep. Just kind of redirect that edge flow here. So you can use ZModeler, you can use ZRemesh, ZModeler, topology, Z-sphere topology, a ton of different ways to do everything in ZBrush. But again, that's more of just eyeballing the mesh and kind of looking where the flow is going to end up and then collapsing and merging and stuff. And I guess that's more experience than anything else. I wish I had a better answer for that. You can, if you really want to be particular about where your stuff goes, we'll go out of polyframe mode here. We'll just show these here. You know what? The heck with it. We'll just merge these together. And then we'll dynamesh these. Go back to matcap gray. You can actually go in here with, say, your standard brush here. And you can start hold down shift. You can start going in here and just like, you can draw in where you want your edge loops to go. And then you can kind of radiate out. And that's basically what I end up doing too a lot, is I'll start from an orifice or something that needs to be round, like a mouth or a nostril or a nose, and make sure that those important areas that are going to animate get topology first, and then the rest of it's just filler. You know, it's just, you know, it is whatever. So you can actually go in here and draw, and you can go in here with, you can hit C to sample. So you can sample black and gray, and you can just go and draw. I don't actually do that, but that's another option that ZBrush has for you. Retopologizing, if I'm not on a deadline, can be nice and relaxing, but I don't remember the last time I didn't have a horrendous deadline, so it does get to be a little bit of more of a just get it done. So Pixelogic, you guys make the world's most perfect instant game res mesh creator. Please. That would be great. And ZRemesh is pretty quick and pretty close. You know, there's a lot of control in there to get really 99% there, 100% there, 85% there, depending on what I'm trying to put together. But usually it does do a lot of the heavy lifting for me, I should say. Okay, so we combine some stuff. ZModeler tire tread. Oh man, I might be bad at this. We'll talk about, if you go to the Pixelogic Classroom, way back when, I did something. It's not ZModeler. It was before ZModeler came out, I believe, but it was more of this type thing. But we'll get to ZModeler too. So what we can do is make a polymesh 3D. We can inflate this here, and then we can go into our transform, activate symmetry. So we're going to do radial symmetry now. And if we're going to do radial symmetry in the Y, so we can kind of go through here, we can kind of mask and then make polygroups. Now, again, if we go back to our brush menu here, remember mask by polygroups, if we turn that up to 100, when we hold down control and start masking, it's going to, well, let's add some more resolution. This is good. There we go. Control D once or twice. We'll delete lower so we can see the actual geometry. And we're going to mess it up anyway, so we don't want any subdivision history. So we can go through here, and you know what? We can do radial symmetry in the Y. Yeah, that'll work. So we'll kind of cut across here, and we'll hit Control W, and then we start drawing again. As long as we stay on the purple, it's just going to stay within the purple. It's going to leave the green alone because we have mask white polygroups up to 100. Vice versa. So keep that in mind. So we can kind of do this, and then we can kind of do maybe this. Control W. Let's actually connect these here. And then maybe this. And then maybe something like this. This won't be the world's prettiest thing, but it will be a thing. So we'll go ahead and get rid of all these things here, and then we'll hit Control W, and now we've got all these different panel polygroups here. So with all these different polygroups, we can go over here to our edge loop. We have panel loops in here. We're going to crank that thickness up a little bit, and we can start getting some interesting things going. Let's go really high in the thickness here. And then you can start, let me see if we can go, yeah, D, and again, told you it wasn't going to be pretty, but you get the idea. You can really quickly, and obviously I did a horrible job masking and determining where those masks should end up. I probably should have started here and then gone out with overlapping these things, but you can see very quickly you can start getting very complex shapes here with panel loops. Also, this one's probably my favorite. If we go here to cylinder, so we got a cylinder here, and we'll make it a polymesh 3D. Let's see if I got it downloaded. Oh, I hope I do. IMMH. Where's my brain today, man? There it is. Oh yeah. So again, ZBrush Central, insert multi-mesh repository. Google all that, or go through the links here. What that does is if I go here, somebody made a tire brush. So what I can do, well, let's take a step back. We'll go to brush, curve, tube. We got a curved tube here, so we just drag out a curved tube, and it'll snap to the object. It'll go off the object. You can grab the little inside things and shake it around. Another thing you can do is you can start drawing and then hold down Shift, and it'll wrap around the object. Of course, you can also, we talked about this, you can isolate pieces of your object and frame any open edges. But it's also interesting. You can just hold down Shift, and it'll loop around the object there. So let's take that knowledge, and we'll go grab our B, insert multi-mesh tires here. So we can drag this out, and here is tire tread. Now, this in and of itself is pretty cool. It's like instant tire tread. So if you want to do like snow tracks, or let's do, just thought of this, brush, what am I looking for here? Stroke. About to have a stroke. There it is. Stroke, curve, turn on as line. You can just drag out a straight line like so. So now, of course, if you want to drag a straight line without it getting all caught up in that nonsense, you can go, or at least the normal curvature of the shape there, go into a poly plane, and then you just drag out an as line. And again, your brush and Z intensity is making this more or less thin. So the brush size is making it bigger or smaller. Z intensity is making it thinner or thicker. Now, if this isn't thick enough for you, you can go down here to brush, and you can tell it under modifiers, there's a strength multiplier. You can crank that up, and it'll really over crank. But that's up to you. So we'll go ahead and put this back down to 1. So we got our tire here. We've got our Z intensity at the size we want. And then if you want to like do tire tracks for an alpha that you want to use anywhere else, you can go ahead and tap that off to delete that curve. And then we'll go ahead and we'll do hide point. By the way, hide point, it's in my custom menu. It's under visibility. Basically, it'll hide whatever's masked. And now you can use alpha grab doc, and that'll grab that hide information of the tire tread. You can use that wherever you want, and it'll also, you can do a texture grab doc, or you can use the mRGBZ grabber we already talked about. So that's super useful. But let's go back to our cylinder here. Undo, undo, undo. So now that we know how to wrap around cylinders, and we got our tire brush here, we can take that, hold down Shift, and is it not going to wrap? Oh, I still have as line. Turn as line off. Stroke as line. There we go. So now we can make a tire. We can make a little thicker tire, or if we don't want that huge of a radius, just take your brush here. I'm just going to do a quick size that down here, and then actually, you know what? We don't even need to do that really, because it's just relative to how thick this thing is. So we're going to crank that Z intensity up, and we'll just keep doing that strength multiplier to make that rubber really thick. And then our Z brush to make it wider. Oh, you know what? I guess our Z brush is doing that too. I mean our brush intensity. We'll snap that back down. There we go. So that looks like a nice big tough tire, right? Also, we have M. There's tire 2. There's another tire tread. You can use that. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, how did they even make this thing? If you remember way back when we first started tonight, you can grab any primitive here, make it a polymesh 3D, geometry, modify topology. You're going to see there's a mesh from brush in here. So they go B, make sure that brush is selected, M, select one of the treads, and then hit that button. And you're going to see there's the mesh they used, and they just made it a curve brush. They made sure that stretch was on. Then you can go back through their settings, obviously, modifiers, see they'd put on weld points here, so the points would weld, and it looks pretty straightforward. Curve mode is on, bend is on, snap is on, curve step is set at 1, so it just goes and it just does all of that. So that's a really easy way to make a tire. Are we good? Cool, cool. Have a good night. Sleep well. I need to go to sleep. What time is it? 10 o'clock? Okay, we got an hour. Cool. You can change it. Yeah, so what you would do is basically go to this thing, change this geometry however you want, really. Or make your own tire treads, any sort of sci-fi tire treads that you want to make it an insert mesh brush, put it on a curve, and then you can just go to, you can keep putting it in this brush, just go to snap here, brush, create insert mesh, append, and that'll just keep appending patterns, and then you'll have a whole library of stuff in one brush with all the right curve settings that you'll set up to do that. Another way, I keep avoiding the Z modeler question because I'm thinking in my head how I'm going to do it. But there's also project array meshes. Is there a tire one? Yeah, we'll do array test. We don't need to save anything in here. There we go. So you can also do tires like this. So let's go ahead and do some Metcalf gray real quick. Okay, so all this is working, and I'm not a huge array mesh guy, but I can probably fumble my way around it a little bit. So we've got an array mesh here. We've got this transform stage. So there's stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4. So basically, you start with this shape here, and then you tell it to go offset in one direction. You can rotate it and duplicate, and as you're going, you're duplicating, telling it how many times to repeat. So this is a repeat of 17. So you start here, you do an offset of 17, and then you just keep continuing to do all of these different transform stages and setting pivot points and stuff until you get this. We could probably do a pretty basic version of this. Not that this is complex, it's just I don't do a whole lot of array mesh. But the cool thing about this one is, if you go, let's see, is it this one? Yeah. So if you go in here and you turn on your, so these are just instances, right? So you can go in here and just find the original one and just make all the changes that you want to. If we hit Shift D, that'll take us out of geometry. So dynamic is turning on and off now. And this one is an interesting one too. So it's actually using, instead of just smooth subdivisions, it's using QGrid subdivisions here. So if I go into solo mode and turn off temporarily array mesh, we do this, you're going to see, so here's our low res mesh, and we can just go in here and like Q mesh, oops. We'll tab these, and we'll just grab this one, and then we'll grab these ones and pull this one out. And then, you know what, we'll keep pulling this one out. And then we'll do Q mesh, a single poly. We can pull this one through, and maybe we'll do a line, full step, and we'll snap this one down. Or you can pull, you know what, I don't like that one. Pull that one through. I don't like that one either. Just get rid of those here. You can mark these ones, snap these up to that one. So Q mesh is a really, really cool thing, by the way, if you haven't checked that out yet. A lot of really cool functionality there. But let's say this is what we want. Now, if we go over here to our smooth dynamic subdivision, that's D to turn that on, and then Shift D to not turn that on. If we turn this on and Q grid is at 0, and you're doing smooth subdivisions, it's just going to average your vertices, which is fine for like sub-D modeling. But it's not really going to work for us in this case unless we go through and put in, for example, like we want to tighten this edge up here, we have to either go through here and you can crease this edge, and that'll like crease this, but then you got to crease these edges, and this shape is pretty complex, so I'd have to do a lot of creasing, or if we uncrease that, we're going to have to go do a lot of control edges, which means just insert a single edge loop and just punching in like a lot of edges in here to kind of tighten up these things here. It's a lot of work. It's kind of destructive. I don't like doing it. One option is don't do smooth subdivisions, do Q grid and just crank that up. And that's going to give you, so we'll do Q grid here. You can do coverage to kind of make those bevels bigger or smaller. You can do chamfer. You can do bevel. Like I said, coverage, the Q grid amount. And what you're doing basically, if we turn on polyframe and we hit apply, you're going to see it's putting in those control edges for me, just for the shape. Pretty cool. Saves you a lot of time. And it's also non-destructive. It's just a dynamic preview, so you can kind of look at it first before you commit to those subdivision levels. Anyway, back to array mesh. So we have this object here, and it's just an instance of this thing. So now we can kind of, I'm kind of answering your question with the whole ZModeler thing. ZModeler this, use array mesh to make a tire shape, and then as you want to, just Q mesh, go ahead and mark these things down. Another cool thing we can do is we'll do Shift D. I'm going to mark these things, and then we're going to go delete a single poly here, and then I'm going to hover over an edge, and we're going to do bridge two holes. If we want to do, well, we can just do an interactive spline. So we'll tap this edge and then this edge here, and then we'll just put in like an interactive little loop here. If you want to make it a perfect circle, you can try going to circle. You can do optimal curvature. You can also bridge two polygons or two connected polygons too. Well, we'll get to that, but here to here. So that'll give you a little bit more of a perfect round shape, and it'll just go ahead and interpolate that stuff. So instant sci-fi thing, tires style-ish. But if you also want to do, let's go do a preferences initialize. You can also do with ZModeler. I don't want a sphere ender. I want a cylinder. And we'll go ahead and make it a polymesh 3D. One thing you can do if you want to quickly get rid of edge loops that aren't deforming the silhouette, you can go to geometry, edge loop, and then just do delete loops based on an angle threshold. That'll go ahead and get rid of those for you. So now that we've done this, we can, let's go ahead, Control Shift, Spacebar, Alt, get rid of those middle points here, delete hidden, geometry modify topology, delete hidden. We'll go ahead and make this a little smaller here. We'll go into our ZModeler brush, QMesh, polygroup all. We'll pull out a tire shape, and then this thing is 32, so I can go in here and let's do transform, activate symmetry, radial symmetry, Y, and we'll do 16, which is half of 32. So now really quickly I can just go through here. We can do an insert edge loop. I don't know what a tire looks like off the top of my head. Oh, another thing you can do is we can mask. Yeah, let's do that. So I'm going to mask here. And then with this unmasked point here, I can go turn off symmetry completely, just hit X. And then you can click this little white dot, and that'll throw that right in the middle of that unmasked point here. I can click that green one, and then I can use E to scale, or R to rotate, and you can kind of just start spinning these things. That'll kind of give you a cool sci-fi look. And then we'll turn activate symmetry back on with Y, and then we can alt tap these ones, and then we can just Q mesh these things out here, and just Z model to your heart's content. We'll go here and pull these out maybe, and then we'll put in another insert here, and we can just pull, bring our skull back, put in a cool skull on here, the Q mesh single poly, and we can pull that through here. Or another cool thing you do with Q mesh, you can just pull straight through, and it'll just, we also need a corresponding edge over here. So here, and then we'll Q mesh a single poly out, and then again down if we want to, or if we decide we don't want that, we can just pull this up, and then insert, we can just pull this through, and we can go through here and Q mesh. Now you can also drop this, doesn't have to be 16, you can do 8. You can mark these, or you can just Q mesh a single poly and pull these in, insert single edge loop, Q mesh this out, and it'll actually start snapping to that if you want. Cool. If you want to control that a little bit more, you can start pulling that out, and then I believe you can hold down shift to do that. Let's go ahead and mask, invert that mask, and we will shove it right here and rotate. We get that face really looking there, and now we can just Q mesh that right in there. Just hold down here, and then we can just, if we want to, we can insert single edge loop, hold down Alt. I'll get rid of that. So you can put those together. World's ugliest tire, but it's just basically Z modelering in radial symmetry. We got a sweet tire. Cool, cool, cool. Everybody good? I am kind of doing some hero stuff. So on my channel and on Pixelogic's channel, I have some stuff going. Let me show you some of that. So streaming, Pavlovich mail, high res. So with this guy here, and we've basically gone through the entire process of just, we did, and there's 2 different types of sculpting. So for this guy, and again, this is on my channel, we just sculpted the guy here, and then we went through and kind of blocked out this stuff. We went into Marvelous Designer a little bit, and then brought it back out, and used Z remesher to kind of get a nice geometry and UVs for that, so we can kind of tile stuff. We're kind of just blocking stuff in here. We got some boots going, and we can recreate these boots too. If you go to my Gumroad Cube Brush YouTube channel, I have a whole boot walkthrough for, let me load this guy up here. Oh, what's his name? He ended up not being a commander actually, but I think we demoted him. My wife was calling him Corporal Bill, so we made him a corporal. This guy has a pair of boots that we made. So this was the guy I made for Substance Days. I made him so we could have some of the texture in class for the, I guess it was some sort of Substance masterclass painter and Substance designer thing I was doing. But basically we make this pair of boots, and it just kind of walks you through the whole process of rebuilding and sculpting and breaking things off and putting little shoelaces. I took this from Paul Gabery's book. He has the ZBrush book. Definitely go check that out. I got it on Kindle, so I could read through it, and it's basically just using Z-spheres to kind of go through here and lace up these boots. And he was really fun. Again, this was started out as Marvelous Designer, then brought it into ZBrush to detail, give it thickness. I don't like dealing with thickness in Marvelous Designer, and detailing in ZBrush is like a must-have. All this puckering and stuff was all ZBrushes, and rebuilding and giving it thickness and snapping and stuff was all ZBrush there. Same thing for the pants and stuff here. It was all ZBrush detailed out. Secondary forms and stuff were kind of built in. But yeah, so This I actually made along with the CG Master Academy class I teach, which was basically right now is kind of just walking through the steps of building a base mesh and base mesh creation techniques, and then accessory mesh creation and stuff like that. And I was doing this for Substance Days, but I kind of did it along with them, and it was the exact same process. I'm obviously a little bit faster than the students, but same idea, so there's no new information there. For the ZBrush one, it was not characters there. We want not recording, streaming, ZBrush female. I got so much crap on my computer, it's not even funny. Details. Where do we leave off on this thing? Okay, so in ZBrush here, let me go ahead and hide this and hide this. So we're just kind of blocking stuff out and doing that kind of stuff, just kind of seeing what we like. But basically, there we go. We did the exact same process with this lovely lady. We made her a tech suit here. We made base geometry, and with her geometry, if you go back to the workshop stuff, we started with the Ryan Kingsline skeleton and just like put on muscles and inflated the skeleton and kind of sculpted out the anatomy, and we talked all about that. And we did I made some changes, so her alignment's a little bit off. That's why I've only got her head showing here. But anyway, sculpted her a tech suit. We got some greebly bits going on here. I think I need to simplify some of this because it's starting to read a little busy. But you know, same thing we do here. Sometimes I don't like concepting live just because it's a lot of me, and I've explained this before, where it's just me going around going, ooh, do I like that? And then it's not really exciting. So decision making for me isn't that exciting. I like to do process stuff while I'm here. But then again, I don't have a whole lot of time on my own to go in concept, so I kind of have to force you guys through watching me rotate around an object for an hour. Cool. Sorry if I'm missing questions, or I'm just kind of going really, really quickly through here. So the Ryzen New Horizons, AMD was nice enough to have me out, and I had my mech helmet, and we went into Keyshot and used up all their Ryzen CPU cores. It was really, really fast. I was pretty impressed with that CPU. We did a lot of CPU stuff, demoing and stuff. I do read chat. There's just a lot of chat to read. Sorry if I missed that. Xbox, if you want to round off the edges. You can round off the edges with just basic box modeling, and box modeling is averaging vertices. So cube 3D here and make a polymesh 3D. And because, you know, we got polarized tops here, but you know what? Let's see what zero mesh will give me. Zero mesher, saturated under zero, same. There we go. So that'll get rid of those polarized caps. And if we hit D, that's going to give us our dynamic preview. And I'm not sure exactly where we were when we were talking about rounding the edges, but basically rounding edges is just a matter of putting space in between. Where am I at? Let's do polygroups here. And I hate modeling without polygroups. They're so useful. They're like, in Maya, they have things called selection sets, which are not useful for modeling. Well, they are, but not nearly as useful as polygroups. We can go to group by normals just to really quickly get a polygroup here. And so if I take QMesh, polygroup all, and then move this up, and then I hit D, you're going to see this, it's having to interpolate it's averaging the vertices between this vertice and this vertice is being controlled by this edge here. So if I go through and I move this edge, I can either make it, I can kind of control how soft that is, that transition, or I can also go in here with insert single edge loop, and I can just pull up an edge here, and I can pull in an edge here, and that'll kind of tighten up. If you're having a hard time doing that, just go to one of these middle ones or hit Shift D, and you can pull in an edge here. These are basically control curves, so you're basically putting more vertices closer to each other so they can do a sharper or broader curve. Um, and this machine, if you go to my YouTube channel, again, so I keep saying that, there's a playlist called Go to Lumi Questions, and there's a bunch of questions I've answered in there, a few. There's one called Workstation Setup, and this is actually a pretty old laptop. And the thing about ZBrush is it runs on almost anything. Now, don't quote me on that. Don't yell at me if you have a weird hardware issue. But I've had really good luck. This is a 4-year-old laptop. It's not a nice laptop, but I have to have a laptop in order to go do demos and teach class, and I'm constantly taking this thing with me everywhere. So I can't. It's not really a maxed out laptop, but it's pretty decent. But ZBrush runs like a champ on it. Haven't had any problems. Cool. What's up, Shane? It's been a while. I'm gonna message you. I got some questions on. You guys go check out Shane Olson's stuff for some stylized modeling. He has some really, really good stuff. I need to get more into that. I tend to err on the side of more realistic, and then if I want to stylize something, I'll go through really quickly with my H polish brush. But that's not the world's greatest technique for that kind of stuff. Cool. Glad you guys are catching some good stuff. Yeah. So okay. Speaking of millions of polygons, what I like to do is keep. So here's this guy. Altogether, he is 20 million polygons. However, he's split up into 184 subtools. So that's how I keep them running. You know what I mean? So I like to, and if I need to select subtools or just work on certain things, I'll just Alt Tap, go into solo mode. Or if I need to work on a group of things at once, I'll Alt Tap, hold down Shift, shoot it to the top, and then I've got those two. I'll just isolate them real quick, and now I'm just working on these two things. And it keeps things nice and quick. And also, I try not to go higher than, like, if I can help it, 4 million per subtool. This guy right here is like 8 million, so it's a little higher than I like to go. But I had a lot of detail to get into him. But for example, if I wanted to look at all his stuff together, I'd have to shoot him to the top. This kind of stuff I'd have to hide, which is okay. And he does have a lot of stuff on him. I'm not gonna lie to you, but we can grab like this little chunk here, these little stitches here, this little bolt here, and he has a big metal thing that keeps that gun arm attached here, a little titanium thing. We can shoot that up. So if I want to see this guy, now I can just go here. Oh, not that one. And now we can just kind of look at, here's his little sewn on thing, his little Frankenstein stuff going on, his little bolts, and then his little titanium little plug-in. So we can kind of a quick way to move your subtools around. Of course, you can use multiple Z tools to bring in. I have on its own thing. Let's go back here. If I want to work on something that's right down like you see his gun arms kind of off to the side at an angle. I don't like working at angles. You can use work planes and stuff, or just use the normals of objects to do that. But what I prefer to do is weapon. Bring in the weapon here. Now, I should turn autosaves off, because when it autosaves, it's saving a Z project, which is all of your Z tools loaded that you have visible. So it's saving 500 subtools right now. But here on this weapon, I wanted to work on it with radial symmetry and with X symmetry down the middle. So I have the weapon broken off down the middle here. And now just a little bit easier to work on. And then I can either decimate if I'm just looking for a working proxy, or I can just take the final mesh in there and rotate it around and break it apart as needed for rendering purposes. So yeah, this is the actual weapon file with everything kind of plugged in here. And this is just a lot of Z modeler, a little bit of Dynamesh, smoothing for some of these intricate parts here. I won't do an expose. You can do an expose under your transform menu, or I think it's usually down here too. I might have gotten rid of it. You can kind of blow, you can combine everything into a single subtool and then blow it up into parts, but this thing might be a little bit heavy. But you know, the total points for this weapon is 2 million, everything together, so that's not too terrible. But yeah, a lot of stuff going on there. But yeah, I do try and keep them under 4 million a piece, just to keep ZBrush snappy, which 4 million is pretty high. Rarely do I, if I'm doing a naked person with no seams, okay, yeah, I might get up to 20 million, but I rarely do that. Usually it's head, hands, torso, that kind of thing. Cool. It's not letting me scroll down anymore. It says more messages below, but uh-oh. Let me repopulate this thing. How are we doing on time? Okay, we got 30 minutes. Anything else you guys want to talk about? We got 30 minutes. I think I just lost the chat here. There it is. Scroll way down. You want a tube to follow a curve, like a square with a tube outlining it. Okay, so that I would do a frame mesh. You know what? I'm gonna give ZBrush a little breather. I'm gonna shut it down. We've been loading a lot of stuff into it. Guess we don't need Zygote body anymore. I'm gonna load it back up. And frame mesh is so useful for all sorts of things, but especially like doing what you're doing. I think you'll find it useful too. So if we take, well, let me make sure. Okay, I'm in ZBrush. You guys can see me. So we got a cube here. Make it a polymesh 3D, and you can just lop off an open area here, and then under stroke, go to. I usually open all. You can hold down Shift and open up multiple menus, by the way. Frame the border, and then at this point, you just frame it with whatever you want. So if you wanted to do like a cube or a strap, or what's a really simple one? BC brush curve tube. You can just curve tube, and then you can just make your brush smaller or larger to accommodate that curve here. Or, you know, brush, curve, brush, insert. Maybe you want bullets. You can make them bullets instead, and it'll just take that curve and frame it. If you want a specific, like say you have a cube here, and you don't want to mess it up, but you need a more specific slice through it. Again, just duplicate off, just like we did on the head. Earlier we did a head with stitches and stuff. It's the same process. Just slice right through there, and that'll give you a nice clean cut, and then you can go ahead and frame that border. And then now it's a pretty low res border there. So what you can do to get more curve points is you can go to geometry, turn off smooth, subdivide, delete lower, isolate that, frame your border. That'll give you a few more points, I believe, and then brush, curve, tube, and do that. Now, here's a caveat. Let's go divide this. Let's say we do mask here, mask here, mask here, and now we've got 3 polygroups here. We can isolate these. And we can go to, oh, you know what? So here's a good one. Let me go ahead and make that a little more obvious. So see that little thing in there? That's a stray polygroup. Sometimes if you go over here to polygroups, you can do merge stray groups, and it'll go ahead and grab some of those for you, or merge similar groups. Or you can just go in here with your ZModeler brush, do polygroup a single poly. If you tap and then hold down tap shift, it'll grab whatever polygroup it is, so you can go in here and paint out. Oops. Or if you want to paint more, you can tap shift and then just paint in where you want polygroups to go. But anyway, go ahead and do those. Geometry, edge loop, we'll do panel loops, and we'll do double thickness. And since those are together, that's fine. Something like that. Okay, so we'll go ahead and do a hide point, delete hidden. So now that we've got these things here, if we wanted to frame each one, like say these were like seat cushions or something, and you wanted to frame them with like a rubber a beading, or what do they call it in Marvelous? Piping. What you can do is we'll grab this one, invert. So we have all those open borders here. We'll go ahead and frame mesh border. And then instead of using brush curve tube, we'll do curve multi-tube. And that'll go ahead and do all of our tubes for us. Looks like it grabbed... let's tap each one of those, I guess. And that'll keep multiple tubes active that we can go ahead and frame. Let me pop this out real quick. Pop out. Sorry, loading chat. Ah, man, really? Sorry, guys, I just cleared the chat. I lost all the chat. Any questions you had, throw them back up. There's also another way. If we have frame borders, I think it was, I watched Paul do this, brush, curve, tube. I think there's a way to do multiple curves with a single one too, but I forget what it is. Or maybe it's a fever dream. I don't remember. But yeah, sorry guys, it cleared my chat when I popped this window out. So if I missed any questions, I apologize. What else we got? We were gonna talk about. Oh, you know what? Let's do that. Brush, curve, tube, multi-tube. Here. Tap off to save those. We can go ahead and do a split mask points here. And then we can go ahead and hit D for the dynamic preview. And we'll go ahead and make this shorter up here. Oh yeah, we were talking about traditional sculpting. So yeah, I raise this one. So if I want to feel like a traditional sculptor, which I am very much not. When I teach anatomy at a Gemini School of Visual Arts here in Austin, and what we do is, since I love teaching anatomy in ZBrush, it's just fast and easy, and it's easy to do modified stuff really quickly. But I can't make a ZBrush a prerequisite for anatomy, so what we do is use Chavant, NSP, and maquettes. And so we get messy with clay, but man, my clay sculptures are not anything to be proud of for sure. But anyways, so we can go here into solo mode. I'm going to go to geometry, delete lower. I'm going to go ahead and slice. Let's go ahead and do, yeah, that'll work. Go ahead and slice through here. We'll hold down Control Shift, and we'll just isolate. Oh, you know what? Turn off perspective when you're slicing so you can get a nice clean slice through here. Control Shift, slice, isolate. We'll delete hidden, close holes, mirror and weld, just to make them all mirrored and stuff. We'll go ahead and smooth out this transition here. So now we got a bust. So now what we're going to do is go to render, external render, key shot, turn off auto merge, and that'll send that over to key shot here, and we can talk a little bit about that. That's usually an easy one to do. Let me make sure it pulls up though. Sorry, let me do another window here. Window capture. Okay. And we'll move this down one, down two, so you can see my face. Sorry, there's holes in me, but that's okay. And now what we can do is, that was basically using the ZBrush bridge, and then this is the ZBrush Keyshot 6.3 Pro for ZBrush. So now what we can do is, under materials, you can go to the ZBrush section, which you can download with the ZBrush bridge. We'll drag on clay for all the subtools. Well, if you have multiple subtools, you can do multiple materials for that. But we'll just go ahead and do this. And for the background, You can change the environment if you wanted to do like him out in the desert. You can hold down control and you can kind of light him this way. This was for the Ryzen demo. This is what I was doing, was just key shot rendering, so you see the CPU usage that it's using here, which hopefully isn't doing anything too terrible to my live stream, since that's pretty CPU intensive sometimes too. But we can also do, we'll go back to interior, or we can put him in a studio, render a high res out. We'll go back to studio here, we'll go back to startup, and we'll put a background in. You can download these from ZBrush as well when you buy the bridge. We'll go and put him on a backplate here. So let's drop a backplate in. And now we can kind of move him into place, and we can kind of put him on a little maquette stand here and position him. You can do, now I like to kind of do my own maquette stands. So what I'm going to do is pause key shot so it's not in my way. I'm going to remember to move this window capture down so we can see what the heck I'm doing. And just really quickly, we'll do insert a cylinder. We're just going to show these two things here. Go out of solo mode here. Cylinder, I'm going to use deformation size and size that down, and then use move. And we'll just put a pole right there. And we're just going to make our own custom stand here. And if we want to, we can go ahead and increase tolerance, give it some dynamic. Let me move this down. Bugs me when I see myself sculpt off to the side. We'll do size again, and then W. So we can do this, and we'll just keep this really, really simple. And then on the bottom here, Alt E, M, I have a custom cube thing I can drag out here. And we can split mask points. And then Shift D, W. We can make a little base for it. And if we want to get ultra fancy, which who doesn't, let's go to brush, insert, industrial parts, and we'll grab a nut. And we'll make it look like this thing is threaded. So we'll go ahead and pop that there. Make sure it's above the wood here. And then we'll go ahead and split that off. Now for this thing here, I could go through and do a twist, but that's probably more trouble than it's worth. So what I'm going to do instead is go to geometry, geometry, delete loops, and then I'm going to go to, no lower res here, insert multiple edge loops, and we'll just kind of throw in a bunch of edge loops here. And actually, you know what? Let's duplicate this off. I'm going to get tricky. And I'm going to take this one, we're going to Q mesh, polygroup all, and we're just going to pull these things out like threading, but I'm only going to do it for maybe down here. So I'm going to go back in here, hold down Alt, delete all that, delete hidden, go into solo mode. If we want to cap this, we can go to close convex hole. We can just kind of cap that, maybe, should. Turn off X. Not on an open edge. Delete hidden. Let's try close holes. Actually, do a quick save. Close holes. Oh, you know what? My bad. Let's grab this ring. Now we'll do delete hidden. Now let's see, close convex hole. There we go. And now we can just hit, let's go ahead and make this. Let's isolate this here. Let's go back to select rectangle. And we'll just crease those open edges there. And now when we hit D, that'll kind of look like threading. Now it's not real threading, but for now, I'm cool with that. I'll live. So we'll go ahead and bring everything else back. And we've got that, we've got that. We've got this here. Now this needs to have a little bit of bevel. If we take this into key shot, it's going to render pretty badly. So what I'm going to do is turn on smooth. We're going to divide this up a few times. And then if we divide it again, it'll go ahead and bevel those lines for us. Or we can just do our trusty dynamic thing, the dynamic Q grid. So we can kind of crank that up. And that'll kind of put those bevels in for us. So we've got our wood in here. Of course, if we want to go through here And you can kind of chew up some of these pieces here, maybe with trim dynamic. Texture, sorry, if you don't like, I don't really like this cursor flopping around all the time, so preferences, edit, align cursor to surface, and you can go through here and do whatever you want. Anyway, so now we've got this, and all these things visible. We'll shoot that back over to key shot, hit BPR, oops, unpause key shot before you do that. There we go. So now this backdrop's not going to work for me, so I'll just drag in an empty backdrop since I got my own custom one here. And now we can position this, so I'm going to go to wood. Oh wait, not for backdrop, material. Yeah, we can go ahead and grab wood polish maybe. Drag that on there. We can go into the material properties here. We can kind of roughen this up, doesn't need to be that slick. And then we can go into, what does this one look like? That's kind of cool. Cool. We can go into textures here. We can kind of scale these up, make the wood grain a little bit bigger, a little less tiled. Oh yeah, so metal here. So we'll go to steel, and we'll just, I guess, drag that on there. And then we'll use the same steel for all of it. So we'll go here to our materials, and we'll just drag steel to here, and then we got our clay here. You can make changes to the steel. Let's go ahead and drop the color down. Here, let's roughen it up a bit. Let's try steel dusty. There we go. That's a little bit nicer. And then this, I'm going to roughen up a little bit more. And then, so in order to make this look a little bit more settled in the scene here, see how it kind of goes from sharp to blurry. We've done this a lot. We'll go back to our environment. You can spin this environment around. You can hold that control and kind of spin the lighting to kind of match. You can crank the brightness a little bit to kind of match it maybe. And then we're going to go down here to lighting. We'll do product lighting. And if this guy was made out of glass or something, we'd want to do a full simulation to make sure we're getting caustics and stuff. We'll do that in a second. And then what else we need to do? Oh yeah, camera. So we're going to go to camera here. We're going to set our depth of field. So whatever's closest or we want in focus here, we'll focus on, and then we'll use our f-stop to either make everything else really blurry, or except for that point, or just kind of crank this around so it kind of blurs out the further from that point it gets. If, for example, we had liquids here, let's do Chardonnay. If we made this guy a liquid right now, it doesn't really look right because basically it doesn't have caustics turned on. We can do a full simulation, and that way it'll pass the, we also need to turn off possibly the ground plane or something, but that'll allow the light rays to kind of go through the liquid and kind of bounce around. And this is really intensive on the CPU, so I'm on a laptop, so oh shoot, I didn't hop back. I hate when I do that. Sorry about that. We basically just dragged on, for example, we'll go back to ZBrush, clay. Here's our clay dude. And we'll go back to product. We kind of just set this guy in here. We set up our camera to select the focal distance and kind of blur out this background. And then you can go through here and let's do a plastic. Let's do a shiny clear plastic. And then we'll go back to our lighting here. Full simulation. Anything that's translucent or clear or liquid or glass, you're going to want to turn that stuff on. And then, again, like I said, it's pretty CPU intensive. On my laptop, it's not going to really crank through that much, but cool. But yeah, so that's the easy way to kind of get in there and do a bit of quick rendering with a little bit more of a traditional look. Looks like a gummy bear. And if you want to, let's try this too. So if we hop back into ZBrush, and this time I'm actually going to do this. Check this out. Into the ZBrush. So let's do a really quick BTO, which is our topology brush here. And I don't want any subdivisions on this thing because I'm going to be drawing on it. Of course, you can draw on something that doesn't have subdivisions and snap to this, but whatever. We can draw a puddle in here, like this, and then we'll kind of give it some thickness there. These we can just go ahead and hold down Alt and you can delete these. And if we like that, we'll just tap off and that'll be our puddle for now. So we're going to go ahead and do a quick split mask points. And then I'm just going to hit, let's just do a polish by features open circle. And then I'll go ahead and polish that into more of a rounded shape. I'm going to uncrease all, which is under your crease menu, and then hit Control D. And that'll just kind of soften that into a puddle here. So now we can take this and hold down Control Shift. Let's delete lower. Control Shift. We can do a copy of this thing. We can shrink it down. We can move it. We can make a different shape. And we'll thicken this back up a little bit like its original here. Or you can just go Alt E M or brush insert B I sphere. And you can just drag that on. Did I drop a curve on there? Delete curve. And then we can just kind of shrink this down. And that can also be like a little puddle. So what am I doing here? So I basically made a bunch of little puddle pieces here. So then we can send those back over. And again, we'll grab. So now we got these things here. So now we can go into our water and we can do just liquid water on those pieces here. And if we have lighting full simulation on, it'll look like liquid beaded water. Of course, I've got to let it go for a little bit to let my renderer catch up. But yeah, so basically KeyShot, if you can buy a separate license to KeyShot, and if you just have KeyShot sitting on your computer, if you want to go from ZBrush to KeyShot with one button click, you have to buy the bridge, and that'll just shoot your stuff across. If you don't have KeyShot and you're just going to be using it with ZBrush, you can buy the KeyShot for ZBrush. It'll be locked to ZBrush, so pretty much the only things you can put into ZBrush or into KeyShot is from ZBrush, but that's all I ever do anyway, so it's a lot cheaper to do it that way to get that version. And let's go ahead and let's go back to lighting here. So you can get the bridge, and then you can get the KeyShot for ZBrush, and then you're good to go. So if we go back to product render, let's go back to basic just to make it move a little bit faster here. We'll go back to our ZBrush materials, make him clay. And with KeyShot Pro, what you can also do is go to edit, add geometry, like we'll put a plane in here, and then you can right click and move part. And let's go ahead and move this plane. And then here we can put in an area light onto here. And you can kind of do your own custom lighting just using geometry. So if you want to back off the brightness on this surrounding plane here, and you know what, let's just go to our environment too. And we'll turn off the background. Let's put in a dark gray. So now you can do your own kind of custom, ooh, let's go back to camera and turn off depth of field. So now you can do your own custom lighting here. We can change this from lumens to watts. That'll blow them out, but we can drop that power down. You can kind of dial in. And it's not all or nothing. You don't have to have just one light source here. You can have light coming from a light source like an area light and also kind of dial in, say we wanted to do, let's go ahead and make him something. Let's do nickel. Titanium. So we got Titanium Man here, and we've got environments. Let's put him outside. So you can kind of blend, or you know what, let's do a studio. So you can kind of blend in between a studio, just turn it completely off. And now this thing's the only thing lighting it, so we'll turn that power down just a bit. You know what, we'll change this back to lumens so it gives us a little bit more. Yeah, let me rough this up a bit. And then back in the environment, you can just slowly increase that environment and it'll start showing up in your reflections as well. So you can kind of go back and forth between your lighting environment and their lighting environment and do whatever you want to there. I kind of like the clay look a little bit better. And you can also go into your scene and just turn off everything else and just have him laying on the floor here. You can also go to edit, add geometry, ground plane, which will be a shadow caster, but we've done this before. I'm just going to go here to change this to a plastic. And we'll make it super dark and super shiny. Now we can kind of see the reflections and the lighting happening. And if, you know, it's going to show up in the reflections, but we can always turn this off visible to camera so it doesn't show up in the camera, just in reflections here. It's kind of up to you. Well, that's the thing too, Poopzilla. This is another way to kind of, and this is what I call my smoke and mirrors. I can do an object in ZBrush and have it look, you know, whatever, but I can also go in here and put like water droplets and really nice materials and refraction and reflection and caustics all over the place, and it kind of sells your idea. Oops. It kind of sells it a little bit, so this can certainly help out with the smoke and mirrors part as far as just like, you know, kind of fog the mind of your art director if they like looking at pretty things. Make it really pretty. Don't spend a lot of time making it pretty. If it's not worth it, you know, pick and choose your battles, but it's also a way to get things approved maybe a little bit faster. I can't speak for every art director, but a lot of them seem to be distracted by really pretty stuff. So if you can give them a really pretty render, they might be more inclined to send you shooting through approvals here. I don't have very much time left. If I don't have any more questions, I'll probably just, I don't know what I'll do. I guess I can just skip out since I don't have a whole lot of time to go in here and do something in particular, but I can add a alpha to my clay brush here. And we can start doing a little bit of, let's see, trim smooth border maybe. Start carving him up into a cool helmet or creature. He's all project blur. Let's dynamesh him. And, you know, probably I don't want Keyshot running in the background if we're not using it. Pause that stuff. Then when I am concepting stuff, I'll have lazy radius on if I want to do like really sweepy, strokey lines, but then I'll just hit L to toggle that off if I just want to kind of go in here and like start poking pieces around or that kind of thing. Now, obviously, if I want to make sure his head's going to fit in there, make sure you duplicate his head off first. Otherwise, you could have a bunch of pieces cutting through a head, making the coolest helmet in the world, and then you put your head in there, your base head, and he's not going to fit. So make sure. I need to ask what the rules are about doing fan art, because I might just do that too. Is just like pick something and then just make it. Because that's also fun to do and you learn a lot of stuff. Just kind of, that's a cool way to kind of tackle different problems. You got to kind of think your way through how you're going to attack a certain thing, as opposed to when I just concept something, I have a tendency just to take the easy way out. It's like, well, that'll be easy and look cool, so I'm just going to do that. Whereas if you're having to work from somebody else's concept or recreating something from, a property or a movie or something, um, you kind of have to make it. You can't really fake too much of it. You can certainly use techniques to kind of fake it or speed along the workflow. But at the end of the day, if he's wearing a top hat, you're going to have to model a top hat. And if you don't know how to model a top hat, you're going to have to figure out how to model a top hat. And then after you've figured out how to model a top hat, then that's one more thing you know how to do. So maybe we'll do a little bit of that too. And it's just fun to do as well. Split that off. Cool. Yeah, I mean, I would be totally down for that. Um, yeah, we could do creature sculpting, uh, making something in particular, and it can be, fantasy. Cloth, I can. I'm not a big fan of sculpting cloth, so if it's a cloth heavy character, I'm gonna go into Marvelous Designer and make it because man, I am. I should say like, oh, sculpting cloth, production. I don't want to spend my time doing that. But the real answer is I'm not good at it. So there's that to consider. But it's certainly not a deal breaker or anything. There's a lot of cool back and forth you can do. Let's go ahead and increase this resolution just a bit. But yeah, I don't know what the, if there's any legal stuff I need to worry about. Suppose I can drop them a line and see what exactly that answer would be if we're allowed to just kind of take another IP. Another thing I wouldn't mind doing is occasionally, it's another thing that's fun to do is, well, it's fun for me anyways, is to take someone else's model, a student, and just go through and kind of, any problem areas I see or any requests they have with that, I would be down for that as well. I just don't know how to pick them, I'd have to get a bunch and just kind of pick one at random, I suppose. And you'd have to be cool with it. Obviously, you're putting your work out there, so and I'm not gonna be like a monster and be like, worst thing ever. It's not like that at all. It's doing anything in 3D, especially when you're just starting out, is certainly trial and error. And I do even as awesome as I am, I'm not awesome at all, but even as much experience as I have, I all the time do things that are certainly not worthy of mass consumption, like what I'm doing right now. But kind of putting your stuff out there is certainly a harrowing thing to do for some people. But that's really fun stuff to do because that's also very collaborative as well, as you can kind of take someone else's idea and kind of riff off of it and kind of give them some options as far as like how to attack their workflow and problem solving, which is something, this is why I use ZBrush a lot too, is that I can problem solve in ZBrush. There's a lot of different options in ZBrush. You're not locked into just like, well, ZBrush is only good at this one thing, so that's all you're allowed to use. It's like, no, ZBrush can do anything. You just have to know the right tools and the right menus to accomplish what you want to accomplish. So that could be another option too. Cool. Yeah. So yeah, any sort of stuff we can do. And we can also just take a 3-hour break next time and just do like creature sculpting or something, and that's really fun to do too. Cool. And you actually can do texture mapping. underneath. If you're just talking about UVs, go to the UV Master. It's got a lot of really cool options in there. Under Z plugin, and you can bake your poly paints out. You can actually bake all your maps in here as well. I do that for some of the head stuff we do. But anyways, I'm going to call it a night. I will catch you all next week, Tuesday on Pixelogic's channel, Thursdays on my channel, same time, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard to 9 p.m. Pacific. I'm in Texas, so those aren't my hours, but just to keep it simple, we'll call it a night. Thanks for showing up, everybody. Thanks for the great questions. I hope I answered all of them. If I missed some, I know I reset the chat and it blew them out for me. If I accidentally scrolled through one of them, I apologize. We can hit them up next time. If I don't have anything specific to talk about, which sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But night, everybody.